Since we've taped the latest episode of the World So Far report, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin has rolled in the tanks in Ukraine. And the speculation that we've made in that episode, namely that maybe we should cut off Russia from the SWIFT system, was put on the table. And against it voted the German problem, the fiscal paradise of Cyprus, the Russia-connected Hungarian state, and the constitution as a terms of service country, Italy. About the latter shall we discuss quite a bit in this video. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Hello again Victor, thanks for sticking around for this video. So at the public request essentially, this video is the result of a longer conversation in our Telegram group about the Italian Republic. We've also made a few offhand comments in the previous 2 or 3 World So Far report episodes that Italy is a country with a constitution as terms of service. So basically, following donor request and public request, we're gonna go through the Italian constitution and of course compare it quite a bit with Romania, but also with the constitutions of other countries. It is of note that the Constitution of Italy in English, available on Senato della Repubblica, the official page of the Italian Senate, is already outdated, even though the last update says there October 2021. Since then, quite a few things have been added.
And the last modification related to the ecosystem and other things is an update from earlier this month in February.
Yep, in February 2022. 2 more amendments to the Constitution. Why so many? Well, because it's terms of service.
We have updated our terms of service.
You don't get a say in it. What? You're the people? Who cares? You still don't get a say in it. I tried really hard to find but I guess my mainstream T-shirt with Ukraine is somewhere lost, and the other one I just can't find it, so I just put this I Love DDR T-shirt because, well, DDR, Italy. Anyway. Alright, so let's go through the Italian constitution. There's quite a lot of it, but it's gonna be fun. So, Article 1, Italy is a democratic republic founded on labor. Sovereignty belongs to the people and is exercised by the people in the forms and within the limits of the constitution. So already we have the first problem. I don't think I've looked through the constitutions of 17 countries of Europe, and I was unable to find a second country that has militant leftism right from the first sentence of the first article. Founded on labor. That's quite interesting, considering that Italy has one of the lowest hourly productive in Europe, and also is the most corrupt country in the European Union.
Yeah, well, it's labor, but not the labor we understand it, which has sort of a Germanic origin.
Right. It's probably labor as in unions, which are of course the tool of the mafia because they invented it. There's that. All right, Article 2. The Republic recognizes and guarantees the inviolable rights of the person, both as an individual and in the social groups where human personality is expressed. The Republic expects that the fundamental duties of political and economic and social solidarity be fulfilled. How do you square individual rights with social groups and social solidarity? I've looked up, if you try hard enough, of course you have to look up in Italian, because Italy is one of those closed countries. It's very difficult to find detailed information about jurisprudence in English. There is no legal definition of what social solidarity means. So as opposed to most countries in the European Union, where the constitution, the terms that appear in the constitution have been debated, defined or redefined via constitutional courts or via referenda, remember those? Italy doesn't remember those for sure. So basically there is a definitive and clear, even if you disagree with it, but there is a clear way of understanding what a certain term in the constitution means in practice when you invoke it in court or when you invoke it on the streets or whatever. Not the case with social solidarity in Italy. So I guess social solidarity means whatever the political class.
Yeah, it's one of those intentionally vague terms which could be used opportunistically to target several mundane issues relevant in that moment. But under the guise of, well, it's social solidarity. See, it says in the constitution, but what does it exactly mean? Well, we don't know. It just says.
Well, so I guess under social solidarity is Italy able to implement sanitary fascism. Need I remind you, at least 4 million people aren't allowed to work in Italy. So, you know, a republic based on labor, in fact, does not allow millions of Italian citizens to work. So there's that.
That's what I think nearly 4 times the population of the Romanian diaspora in
something to that effect. Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly something like that. Well, it's pretty serious, especially since now Italy is no longer an attractive country for Eastern Europeans to move in, which is now now you have weird people like Bangladeshis, Nepalis.
It's a highly attractive country for Eastern Europeans to move out from.
Yeah,
out of. Yes, that's true. I guess the constitution may have something to do with it. Article 3, all citizens have equal social dignity and are equal before the law, I guess with the exception of those that don't accept certain medical procedures, without distinctions of sex, race, language, religion, political opinion, personal and social conditions, I guess with the exception of the personal condition of not accepting a certain medical procedure. It is the duty of the Republic to remove those obstacles of an economic or social nature which constrain the freedom and equality of citizens, thereby impeding the full development of the human person and the effective participation of all workers in the political, economic and social organization of the country. Well, there you go. It says there, the duty of the Republic is to remove obstacles of an economic and social nature. So, you know, the medical one is okay.
Yeah, well, we realized that the second paragraph of the third article is complete bollocks, based on what we've seen the past 2 years in Italy.
Yes, and it should be noted, Article 3, although it sounds long, it's actually one of the short ones. As we progress through this magnificent document, you'll see that certain articles in the Italian constitution are literally blocks of text, walls of text. So there's that. Article 4. The Republic recognizes the right of all citizens to work and promote those conditions which render this right effective. Every citizen has the duty, according to personal, potential and individual choice, to perform an activity or a function that contributes to the material or spiritual progress of society. Who wrote this? Giovanni Gentile?
Well, it wouldn't be only that amazing, considering that the Italian constitution appeared after 1948. So you think that since the Allies rolled in with the tanks and with the amphibious warfare in Italy in 1944, they had 4 years of seeing who's gonna write the new constitution after we got rid and hanged Mussolini.
The commies wrote. Yeah, that's why I asked who wrote this. Giovanni Gentile is a fascist theoretician and is the first one to introduce the moral and the spiritual progress of society as an obligation. Although, admittedly, he was ascribing it to corporations, whereas this socialist constitution ascribes it to individuals. Although it sounds eerily close to from each according to his needs. I'm just saying, maybe I'm too paranoid, but you know, after having seen what the degradation of personal liberty to where Italy can go to, I'll be extra careful with anything of this nature coming from the Italian, not just constitution, but the political class in general. And as we will see throughout this document, they're kind of inseparable, unfortunately. Article 5, the Republic is one and indivisible. It recognizes and promotes local autonomies and implements the fullest measure of administrative decentralization in those services which depend on the state. The Republic adopts the principles and methods of its legislation to the requirements of autonomy and decentralization. So that would mean sometimes the local authority can disagree with the center, and the center will have to agree with the local authority. I guess that doesn't apply when it comes to this fluffy cough.
Well, yeah, their terms of service again. It's not an our constitution, to have rigid remarks and rigid sorts of implementation. When it's about several issues.
It's weirder than even the Australian one. I mean, we were joking in the World So Far report about their internal hard borders, but those are possible precisely because of the rigid principle that the so-called public health is exclusively for the state. Rather than the federal government, and the federal government has his hands tied and say, well, if the state authorities decide to be stupid in public.
Yeah, we've been saying, not in the previous episode, but 2 episodes ago, that when we were discussing a bit about the upcoming federal elections in Australia, that Scott Morrison is kind of screwed because most likely the pandemic will blow up in his face, but he actually has not much of a fault related to it. It's just that the rest of the Australia, being the states of Australia, the provinces, have decided to be stupid in unison.
Almost in unison, because the rural states of Australia stopped being stupid in public 2 years ago, but the crowded ones, the ones that in Western Australia in particular, well,
Western Australia, but South Australia as well. South Australia had that project where they tried to implement an app where you'll be asked at random to send a picture showing that you're in the house, that you're quarantining.
Yes, and that worked out well, didn't it? Oh wait, yeah. It's almost as if those kinds of projects aren't about the virus, and it's almost as if they can't work because humans aren't robots yet. So there's that. The Republic safeguards linguistic minorities by means of appropriate measures. Article 6 of the Italian Constitution.
This is very vague.
It's very vague, and I presume it refers to the Italian dialects, because other than that, I know quite a few communities, such as the Spanish community in Italy, which may come and read this article and say, fact check, false. I'm just saying. Article 7, the state and the Catholic Church are independent and sovereign, each within its own sphere. Their relations are regulated by the Lateran Pacts. Amendments to such pacts, which are accepted by both parties, shall not require the procedure of a constitutional amendment.
Okay, this one is all right.
Yeah, this seems legit. Article 8, all religious denominations are equally free before the law. Denominations other than Catholicism have the right to self-organization according to their own statutes, provided these do not conflict with the Italian law. Their relations with the state are regulated by law based on agreements with their respective representatives. Okay, fair enough. Although maybe it shouldn't apply to a certain religion of peace, but I guess I digress. Article 9, the Republic promotes the development of culture and of scientific technical research. It safeguards natural landscape and the historical and artistic heritage of the nation. And as of February 2022, they also added the state also cares for the environment, the biodiversity, and the ecosystem in the interest of future generations. The law of the state shall regulate the form of ownership of animals. Why would you put that into the Constitution? I mean,
wow, yeah,
that's quite wild to put it in the Constitution about how to regulate the ownership of pets, essentially. I mean, I laughed a few years ago about certain localities in Canada that quite literally require a license to cat. if you don't have a license for that cat, then the state can confiscate your kitty. Or I loved about the Brits that certain boroughs of London have a dog walking license. So, if you're walking a dog down the street, a police officer can at least in theory stop you and ask you if you have a license for that dog.
but in all truthfulness, that license applies only for people that have to walk simultaneously more than 6 dogs, which is not something common by any means, even by the standards of the British.
Yes, but still, I mean, the very idea that such thing called the dog walking license exists is in and of itself. I mean, come on. But Italy takes it to a whole new level. I mean, just a few weeks ago, they decided to add into the constitution that there should be a license for your kitty. Come on, man.
Well, okay, then that does that mean I can also apply to have an alligator as
my pet?
As a pet? Yeah, exactly. I could invoke something just like the Floridians do whenever they go out and walk their alligators. Well, it's an emotional support animal.
Exactly, yeah. My emotional support is an alligator.
Yeah, so how exactly do you argue that from a constitutional point of view now that you have this one in the constitution? Well, you're going to breach my right to health care because I need an alligator license?
Yes, and emotional support is part of, or should be part of healthcare, of course. Article 10, the Italian legal system conforms to the generally recognized principles of international law. The legal status of foreigners is regulated by law in conformity with international provisions and treaties. A foreigner who in his home country is denied the actual exercise of democratic freedoms guaranteed by the Italian constitution shall be entitled to the right of asylum under the conditions established by law. A foreigner may not be extradited for a political offense. But who would unironically ask for asylum I mean, on most of the planet, if not all of the planet, really, you don't need to show your papers to eat at a restaurant. So, why would you go to...
Yeah. Based on this article from the Constitution, here is where you should have done that ploy with going to the Swedish office to ask for asylum because of the illegal and liberal regime in Bucharest.
Yes, but I didn't have my papers right to get into Italy.
Yeah, I mean, that as well.
So there's that.
Or are we again assuming that? Oh yeah, it's the European Union. You cannot be illiberal and illegal and coercive.
Yeah, well, I guess you can if your prime minister is Draghi and is gleefully and joyfully and voluntarily licking the boot of Ursula von der Leyen. So there's that. This one is fun. Article 11. Italy rejects war as an instrument of aggression against the freedom of other peoples and as a means for the settlement of international disputes. Italy agrees on condition of equality with other states to the limitations of sovereignty that may be necessary to a world order ensuring peace and justice among nations. Italy promotes and encourages international organizations furthering such ends, I guess with the exception of SWIFT sanctions against Russia. I guess
so SWIFT sanctions would be removal from SWIFT.
Yeah, in this case, yes.
In the case of Russia, yes, it will be a sort of economic warfare. So that's why our Italians are against it.
I see. It suppresses labor and shit. Mascarpone. I mean, really. But technically speaking, I guess we could sue the Draghi government at the Constitutional Court and say that the Draghi government is breaking the Constitution. But we could do that if Italy had a judicial system, which it doesn't, and you'll see further.
Yeah, not to mention, as far as our resident Italian told us, there isn't actually a way as a citizen to petition the Constitutional Court. The president should do that, but the president in himself is also playing on the same team with the rest of the regime of Draghi.
Oh, by the way, there were presidential elections recently in Italy. You haven't even heard about that in the media because the president is not elected by the people like in normal republics. And Sergio Mattarella got re-elected. He's 81. He'll be 88 at the end of his second term. I mean, it's a boomer republic. Admittedly, I mean, you know, the United States and Italy have the oldest political class, because I've taken an interest over the last several weeks in this. And to a certain extent, Russia too, by the way. You know, but of the Western countries, Italy and the United States have some of the oldest political classes on the planet. Like literally everyone else have tried really, really hard not to have exclusively not just boomers, but even you know, greatest silent generation, kind of silent generation. No,
yeah, but that's the thing. You cannot even have silent generation because they will be close to 100 by now, or in their 90s.
Yeah, well,
so they're way beyond being at least even capable of political engagement, because that's
I'm sorry, in 2019 a 93-year-old ran for re-election in Britain and almost won. He had been an MP for 25 or 35 years, something like that.
Yeah, it's true. There may be special individuals who can, but the vast majority can't, which is why the pool of potential candidates gets shrunk up until it disappears. Because
which
that's
is why
the
you
state.
keep on seeing the same bloody faces in the countries that don't have this any sort of mechanism of just refreshing the blood in the political class, even just a little bit. I mean, really, is it really nobody capable of being the president of Italy than that 81, 82-year-old guy? I mean, come on. Now, admittedly, the other option was a guy named age 94, so you know, I'm just saying.
Probably that guy would have done a better job, even if even if he would have exited the same way as Mattarella may, though we're not wholly confident. He may exit the presidential term with his feet forward out of the door.
Yes, no, not really, because the other guy was straight out from the Partito Comunista Italiano, so you know, I'm just saying. In any event, so yeah, Italy essentially rejects war as an instrument of aggression, unless it's about Russia, and Draghi disagrees.
I wouldn't say that being from the Communist Party is a bad idea, especially since he's 94. He may be part of that first wave of idealist Bolsheviks, which were in line with Lenin. So
that and also being 94 has a strong chance of becoming a good communist really fast. Yeah,
and we could have seen, unironically, something similar to what happened in something happened in Russia, where only the Communist Party, so the descendants of the Bolsheviks, were the only ones against Putin's measures.
True. Even now, by the way, the Communist Party is the only one kind of opposed to these shenanigans in Ukraine. So there's that. Article 12 is about the flag of Italy. Okay, fair enough. Article 13, personal liberty is inviolable. Okay, fact check false. And there you go, here's the first wall of text. So Article 13, personal liberty is inviolable, no one may be detained, inspected or searched, nor otherwise subjected to any restriction of personal liberty, except by order of the judiciary stating a reason, and only in such cases and in such manner as provided by the law. In exceptional circumstances and under such conditions of necessity and urgency as shall conclusively be defined by the law, the police may take provisional measures that shall be referred within 48 hours to the judiciary, for the validation of which, in default of such validation, in the following 48 hours shall be revoked and considered null and void. Any act of physical and moral violence against a person subjected to a restriction of personal liberty shall be punished. The law shall establish the maximum duration of preventive detention. Okay, so 3 paragraphs before it implicitly does establish a maximum amount of maximum duration of preventive detention to 48 hours, but then it says the law shall do you people even logic? I mean,
yeah.
And I've looked at the original text. It's a good translation, so it's not something lost in translation. It's amazing how imprecise it is going.
Yeah, not even to mention that now we see the terms of service part. So the article starts with personal liberty is inviolable, and then and then it begins. First paragraph: no one may be detained, inspected, or searched. except by order of the judiciary.
Well, that's fair. I mean, in fairness, that's fair. That's how you write law in in Roman law, and you would expect at least Italy to observe the technical legislative of the Roman Empire. First, you state the principle, and then you list the exceptions. Now, I don't have a problem with this one, except by the order of the judiciary. Pretty much everyone has that. Where I do have a problem is that it purports to define what is preventative detention in one paragraph, and then in the same article, 2 paragraphs later, it says, well, actually, that's established by the law. So that means essentially it opens the potential inmate to judicial abuse, because there is no limit in practice because of this. In fairness, this article related to the to preventative detention and how to arrest people and whatnot is the only one that is also a wall of text in the in the Romanian constitution as well, and for bloody good reason, because random arrests were very common during the communist regime. So the framers of the post-communist republic insisted on having a few things that must be gotten right and not be left to the parliament. One being the absolute forbiddance of censorship, and one being exactly this. And in the Romanian constitution, it's basically an entire law on preventative arrest in one article, but it's very, very precise. It doesn't leave anything to random. This one leaves it a lot to random. And considering this, I don't think it's the slowest, but I think it's the second slowest judicial system in Europe is in Italy. The slowest being in Spain, I think. I wouldn't trust the Italian judges on this. I mean, if it's a terms of service kind of constitution, might as well update it and just put the maximum duration there, because that should be better. Article 14, the home is inviolable, personal domicile shall be inviolable, home inspections, searches or seizures shall not be admissible, save in the cases and manners complying with measures to safeguard personal liberty. Controls and inspections for reasons of public health and safety or for economic and fiscal purposes shall be regulated by appropriate laws. Okay, fair enough. Article 15, freedom and confidentiality of correspondence and of every other form of communication is inviolable. Limitations may only be imposed by judicial decision, stating the reasons in accordance with the guarantees provided by the law. Actually, this one is good. And in fact, it's better than in other constitutions. I mean, for instance, look up the equivalent in the German constitution, where it has so many exemptions that basically the B and D can be stronger than the Stasi. Whereas this one says, no, everything is inviolable and only individual judicial decisions are permitted, and only if those have gone through judicial review. Actually, this one is good.
Yeah, well, it is a comparison, because you made a comparison with the German. Well, you can't exactly compare the sort of de facto the descendants of the Roman Empire and compare them with barbarians, which is what the Germanics as a whole are. That includes Northern Italy, by the way. We haven't forgotten about you.
Yes, and that's why it was called the Holy Roman Empire, because it was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. So there's that. Article 16, every citizen has the right to reside and travel freely in any part of the country, except for such general limitations as may be established by law for reasons of health and security. No restriction may be imposed for political reasons. Every citizen is free to leave the territory of the Republic and return to it, notwithstanding any legal obligations. So there you go. That's why that BS was possible, which was essentially not possible anywhere else in Europe, namely to have hard borders within the country per region. It's the only country in Europe that had the liberty to behave like Australia, essentially. But even so, they behaved less badly than Australia.
Yeah, well, because at the end of the day, we're talking about Italians. They're not famous for rigid control and rigid implementation of anything in particular.
Yes. But it was tried, right? It had colored areas depending on how much people were coughing, and you could or couldn't cross from one region to another. And at some point, there were people who had to illegally leave Sicily. And there are other smaller islands too that have bridges, and basically those that didn't have papier-and-zie, they had to have their own boats. So needless to say, merchants emerged that they would give for a fee a ride to the mainland without papier-and-zie. And with the moment those videos emerged on the internet, that's when the colored system was abolished. I mean, to the credit of the political class, when they realized that there's nobody's going to observe it, they're like, okay, fine, we tried.
Yeah, it's fine, but at least something was done.
At least something was done. Yes. Article 17, citizens have the right to assemble peacefully and unarmed. Okay, no. No previous notice is required for meetings, including those held in places open to the public. In case of meetings held in public places, previous notice shall be given to the authorities, who may prohibit them only for proven reasons of security or public safety. So no previous notice is required, but in some cases previous notice shall be given. So which one is it? Because without the third paragraph, it would actually be quite a decent enough article to the Constitution. Although I would cut the unarmed part because I prefer the First Amendment type of. The right to peacefully assembly, but then followed by the Second Amendment. Kind of like the Michigan meetings, right? They were very peaceful, but still. Citizens, Article 18. Citizens have the right to form associations freely and without authorization for those ends that are not forbidden by criminal law. Secret associations and associations that even indirectly pursue political aims by means of organizations having a military character shall be forbidden. So the Freemasonry is okay. Oh, fair enough.
The Freemasonry is okay, the labor unions are okay, but the mafia is not okay.
But the mafia is not okay, even though the mafia was the only friend that the citizens have had over the last 2 years, I'm just saying. This is the reason why Italian citizens don't take the Constitution seriously, because, well, why should they? They can't amend it. The political class can amend it whenever they goddamn please. Without even, at least publicly consult the populace, preferably via referenda, like we do in normal countries. So, and then there's this, right? You can assemble without authorization, but actually you can't. So, there's that. Article 19. Anyone is entitled to freely profess their religious belief in any form, individually or with others, and to promote them and celebrate rites in public or in private, provided that they are not offensive to public morality. What does that mean? Offensive to public morality. Because when you write law, and especially when you write constitutions, you can't really expect everyone to understand what you mean. No, you have to spell it out. Because, of course, the main defense of the vagueness of the 19th article to the Italian Constitution is, well, you shouldn't be having Satanism and sacrifice pigs or children in public, or you shouldn't be having, a nudist association meeting in front of a church. Yeah, sure, we can all agree that those are kind of a bit haram, and maybe they shouldn't be permitted in public. But what if the Italian political class decides that, opposing QR codization is offensive to public morality? Then what? Or what if the political class decides that just going to the church? Yeah,
we just have to remember, in our case, the myriad of issues that were against related to the vague interpretation of public morality that also sparked those issues with rap groups in particular.
Oh, that was 25 years ago.
And the censorship that came after that, and that wasn't part of the constitution in Romania. It was part of the law. It
wasn't even part of the law. It was infra-legal document. It was the internal regulation of the National Audiovisual Council. And it took a while until it was taken down. And it ended with a huge, really huge concert in front of the Parliament's house, celebrating the death of the guy who wrote the regulation. As pious and orthodox as we are as a nation, and in orthodoxy is very haram to celebrate someone's death. But even so, hundreds of thousands of people wanted to openly celebrate with those censored rap groups the death of Ralu Filip, the architect of that. So it's a very serious thing here. Jokes aside. having things like offensive to public morality in the law is already problematic in and of itself. Having it phrased like this without any explanation and no jurisprudence accompanying it, ouch. That's not a place I would want to live. No, Article 10, no special limitation, 20, or tax burden may be imposed on the establishment, legal capacity, or activities of any organization on the ground of its religious nature or its religious or confessional aims. So I guess jizya is illegal under the Italian constitution. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, considering that Italy has had experience with the Emirate of Sicily.
Yes, understandable. Understandable. Yeah. Article 21, anyone has the right to freely express their thoughts in speech, writing, or any other form of communication. The press may not be subjected to any authorization or censorship. Here's a block of text. Seizure may be permitted only by judicial order stating the reason and only for offenses expressly determined by the law on the press or in case of violation of the obligation to identify the persons responsible for such offenses. In such cases where there is absolute urgency and timely intervention of the judiciary is not possible, a periodical may be confiscated by the criminal police, which shall immediately and in no case later than 24 hours refer the matter to the judiciary for validation. In default of such validation, in the following 24 hours the measure shall be revoked and considered null and void. The law may introduce general provisions for the disclosure of financial sources of periodical publications. Publications, performances, and other exhibits offensive to public morality shall be prohibited. There you go again. Measures of preventive and repressive measure against such violations shall be established by law. I appreciate that they say repressive measures, so they call it by its proper name. It's quite to be appreciated, I guess. But no, seriously, again, what does this mean, right? If it is offensive to public morality, and who's gonna be the arbiter of that? Because, public morality is not something fixed. What is acceptable today may not be acceptable a year later, or vice versa. What exactly is who's going to be the arbiter of that? Well, I guess the courts, which take years until they make a decision, and then that decision does not become part of the constitutional jurisprudence. So even if I win in court, someone else doing the same thing as I do may end up being subjected to the same repressive measures as the Constitution aptly calls them.
Yeah, and in order to drive the point home related to how public morality is not something fixed, since we're talking about Italy, let's go back again to the Roman Empire. Before the arrival of Imperator Augustus, things like bacchanalias and orgies and also heterosexual, but also homosexual orgies, with children included, were something common, and they were not exactly immorally or damaging to public morality.
Definitely were not considered haram.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Not to mention also the ridiculous high divorce rate that was a particularly sticky problem that also Imperator Augustus himself mediated in order to fix it once he got the power. So
he tried to purge degeneracy.
Yeah, several years and decades ago, orgies and bacchanalias were okay, but then after they were no longer okay. So yeah, things change pretty fast, and that's why public morality isn't something fixed. And again, when used in a legal aspect, being this open to interpretation, that's dangerous in itself towards the people themselves.
I'm not saying the law shouldn't try to keep up or shouldn't have aspects related to public morality in it, but I'm saying that should be the law, not the constitution, precisely because it can be amended easier. Oh wait, the Italian constitution is in fact easier, so I can understand. It's in fact easier to amend. Article 22, no one may be deprived of his legal capacity, citizenship, or name for political reasons. Okay. 23, no obligation of a personal and or financial nature may be imposed on any person except by law, so I guess no protection tax. Article 24, anyone may bring cases before a court of law. Yeah, sure, that doesn't mean someone will look at it, in order to protect their rights under civil and administrative law. Defense is an invaluable right at every stage and instance of legal procedures. The poor are entitled by law to proper means for action or defense in all courts. The law shall define the conditions and forms of reparation in case of judicial errors. The positive part is that the Constitution admits outright that such thing as judicial errors can exist, which is good. In many states in the European Union, the onus is to first go beyond, convince the court to go beyond its inherent bias that states that judicial errors are a fiction, whereas in Italy you can go straight up and invoke the Article 24 and say, look, judicial errors are a fact. Now let's look at this particular instance and see if one such judicial error has occurred here. That's the positive part. The negative part is the poor are entitled by law to proper means for action or defense. So essentially you identify as poor and you start suing everyone on the state's dime just because you can. I guess that negative could turn into a positive as well. If there are any Italians watching, check the program available and see if you can sue the state for the cough measures.
Yes, especially those who are no longer working because they don't have the super boosted or boosted green pass.
Yeah, I mean, those people definitely qualify as poor, no matter how restrictive the definition may be in the infra-legal document regulating this. This should definitely be attempted. I mean, this is a nice opportunity to weaponize the institutions against the state and weaponize the constitution against the state. I mean, of course, until they modify this article as well. But until then, you know, it's an option. Article 25. No case may be removed from the court seized with it as established by law. No punishment may be inflicted except by virtue of a law in force at the time the offense was committed. No restriction may be placed on a person's liberty save for as provided by law. This is terrible. So punishment may be inflicted by virtue of a law in force at the time the offense was committed. So what if the law is no longer in force now? In normal countries, you no longer get prosecuted because whenever there are two laws that apply to a certain situation, the most favorable to the defendant is considered. At least that's the case in Romania, in France, in Germany. In Italy, no. In Italy, the law that was in force at the moment of the offense, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. I will think here of a hypothetical scenario. Say that 15 years ago, homosexuality would have been illegal in Italy, and you would have received prison time for that. With the speed of the Italian judicial system, the law will disappear at some point. Would have disappeared probably 5 or 10 years from that moment on when you committed the so-called crime, but you still get shafted and sent to prison because for a law that in that moment when
the offense was committed,
when the offense was committed, this is no longer.
The example is a good one. That's how Germany learned to apply this principle of taking into consideration the most favorable legislative situation for the defendant. Precisely because of that, they had, I think it was called paragraph 93. I don't remember exactly, but there was a paragraph in the West German political criminal code that did criminalize homosexuality, and then eventually the paragraph was abolished. But people still got prosecuted precisely because, but they didn't have it in the constitution. It was just part of the jurisprudence, and the constitutional court intervened and said, no, actually we should be less stupid in public. So yeah, this one would definitely deserve to be rewritten. Article 6, extradition of a citizen may be granted only if it's expressly envisaged by international conventions. In any case, extradition may not be permitted for political offenses. Okay, fair enough.
So if Snowden would have ended up in Italy instead of Russia, he would have actually ended up extradited to the US.
Article 28, officials of the state or public agencies shall be directly responsible under criminal, civil and administrative law for acts committed in violation of rights. In such cases, civil liability shall extend to the state and to such public agency. Okay, so basically the criminal responsibility is personal unless it's an officer of the state, in which case the state is liable for reparations and the public agencies, but not the individual. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Admittedly, until about 10 years ago, this was the situation in Romania as well. But as of 2010, 2012, things have slowly started changing, but most bureaucrats did not find out that until the pandemic hit, when we started suing them personally. And now they're suddenly finding out, what, I'm personally accountable for being stupid in public?
Shocking.
Shocking. I mean, how could this be? I mean, we were promised immunity from prosecution. Yes, but not immunity from civil liabilities.
Yeah, well, here is terrible. So in this case of the pandemic, you can't exactly go for the individuals that hurt more than institutions, because you can't, because they're officers of the state. Again, here we can see the
fascist heritage.
Yeah, exactly, the fascist socialist heritage. Where you have the plebs, and then you have the state apparatus, the two-class system.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you can go after individuals is via paralegal means. You know, these people have addresses. I'm just saying, they sleep somewhere. Article 29, Title 2, Ethical and Social Rights and Duties. Article 30, it is the duty and right of parents to support, raise and educate their children even if born out of wedlock. In the case of incapacity of the parents, the law provides for the fulfillment of their duties. The law ensures such legal and social protection measures as are compatible with the rights of the members of the legitimate family to any children born out of wedlock. The law shall establish rules and constraints for the determination of paternity. Yes, this article in particular, specifically the first paragraph of it, the duty and the right of parents to support, this one is one of the few cases when the article in the Constitution was subjected to judicial censorship, when the High Court of Cassazione, ruled that there is a maximum limit for that. Because there was no maximum limit, so you had children aged 45 suing their 80-year-old parents for failing to support them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Man, I remember that one. There were even memes made about that. Unfortunately, in Italian, because if you were to make it in English, you have to explain with a wall of text.
It would have become a leftist meme.
Yeah, it would have become a leftist meme. And what exactly was so funny about that one? That meme related to exactly a case similar to that one that you mentioned, where a 35-year-old man still living with his parents in Italy sued his already retired parents in his 70s for not giving him pocket money.
Yes.
At the age of 35.
Yes.
Oy vey. This goes beyond anti-Judaic principles.
Now, in fairness, it's not just pocket money, and unfortunately, it is not a rare situation. It is part of the Italian societal standard for children to stick around at the parents' house long after the age of 20, long after the age of 30, and routinely after the age of 40. And just like everywhere else in the world, women leave the home slightly earlier, but not by much. And that's becoming and has becoming quite a problematic situation. And this article in the Constitution was routinely abused. And even now, I mean, the Cassazione, I think, ruled that the maximum age is 30. So, it's still...
Well, okay, pragmatically, it would be understandable if Italy would have been a country that had atrociously expensive real estate, or if your parents lived in a multi-story house where you could live technically in the same house as they do, but they live in a separate area of the house, like probably the first floor or the second floor, and they live on the ground floor. That's understandable. But when you end up in a man-child scenario where at the age of 35 you still beg for pocket money rather than go get a fucking job, that's when it becomes a problem, and that's the problem in Italian society, because again, people have forgotten how to work and how to have personal responsibility, and that's the thing that they teach their children after that. No personal responsibility for yourself as an individual, which is terrible, and then towards the family that you've built or you're part of.
Yeah. And this probably also explains the high levels of obedience of so many Italian citizens in front of the legislative and illiberal abuse by the Italian political class, using this fluffy cough as an excuse. So there's that. Article 31. The Republic assists the formation of the family and the fulfillment of its duties with particular considerations for large families through economic measures and other benefits. The Republic protects mothers, children and the young by adopting necessary provisions. Same thing. In this article is also routinely abused by there is that, I don't remember the name of the program, but there is a state program where you can essentially ask for state support for caring for the elderly. That's where you had, until recently, usually Romanian, now usually Bangladeshi or Albanian, women in particular, who come in and care for the elderly, and they're being paid through those state subsidies, oftentimes, although not always. And that in itself wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the other issue, namely that the younger members of the family, they consider that they have fulfilled their duty by just dropping a complete stranger there to care for the elderly member of the family and just paying that person, and that's it. They don't see them with maybe once a year, or sometimes even worse than that. So that's how you have so many old people in Italy that have been essentially on life support for years, and quality of life zero, but as much quantity as possible so they can milk as many subsidies as possible. And this also explains, by the way, the much higher death toll as a result of the fluffy cough, because those aren't just old and infirm, are clinically fragile or frail. In ways that it would be politically incorrect to describe them on YouTube, really. And it's quite a tragedy, and it's thanks in part to this article in the Italian Constitution, and of course the subsequent legislation based on it. Article 32, the Republic safeguards health as a fundamental right of the individual and as a collective interest, and guarantees free medical care to the indigent. No one may be obliged to undergo any health treatment except under the provisions of the law. The law may not, under any circumstances, violate the limits imposed by respect for the human person. That's a weaker standard than the one we have in Romania, and it shows. I mean, really, it shows. As for the free medical care to the indigent, unless it's dental or unless you live a bit too much in the south, or unless the EU says that you should shut down some hospitals. It's a lot of asterisks there.
Just like in terms and conditions.
Yes.
Terms of service,
yeah. Article 33. The Republic guarantees the freedom of the arts and sciences, which may be freely taught, except the doctors who want to have a different opinion on how I do it. The Republic lays down general rules for education and establishes state schools for all branches and grades. Entities and private persons have the right to establish school and institutions of education at no cost to the state, I guess with the exception of the Children of Christ group that established schools over the last 2 years in southern Tyrol, and the state was very, very upset as a result of it. They couldn't do anything to them, but they were very upset because those newly established schools had these weird ideas, such as children shouldn't be wearing muzzles, thou shalt not enforce medical procedures on children or parents, thou shalt not teach communism in schools. And they had these these weird ideas, I know. Very extremist, of course, I disavow. The entities, okay, I said that. The law, when setting out the rights and obligations for the non-state schools which request parity, shall ensure that these schools enjoy full liberty and offer their pupils an education and qualifications of the same standards as those afforded to pupils in state schools. Now that's not difficult. State examinations are prescribed for admission to and graduation from the various branches and grades of schools and for qualification to exercise a profession. Higher education institutions, universities and academies have the right to establish their own regulations within the limits laid down by the law. Why do you have to, all of that had to be written in the Constitution? I mean, that's one of the many articles in the Italian Constitution that are needlessly long. Where they should be long, they're incredibly short and elliptic, and where they don't have to be long, they're like just a leftist meme. So there's that. For qualification to exercise a profession. So if we are to interpret this literally, then there are no theoretical high schools in Italy, right? They're all trade schools. Of course, that's not the case. So either non-trade schools, high schools are unconstitutional, or this is poorly written. Economic rights and duties. Article 35. The Republic protects work in all its forms and practices. It provides for the training and professional advancement of workers. It promotes and encourages international agreements and organizations which have the aim of establishing and regulating labor rights. It recognizes the freedom to emigrate subject to the obligations set out by law in the general interest. Then protect Italian workers abroad. Okay, the one with protecting Italian workers abroad is part of the fact that when this constitution was written, a lot of Italians were going to Germany to work, and needless to say, the German problem, they were subjected to all sorts of abuse, and the political class at the time thought that they need such a tool. Now, the part with the Republic providing training and professional advancement of workers, first of all, why does that have to be in the Constitution? And two,
that's true.
And two, I mean, why does this have to be the case to begin with? I mean, since when does the state know better than individuals on what kind of training they need, how to advance or how to stick around? I mean, not everyone wants a full-time career, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but in all fairness, it says that it provides training. I think that they're doing something similar to what Anno Femei and Ajo Femei is doing in Romania, where they technically offer you courses.
Yeah, but nobody signs up for them. So
well, I can't understand why, because
they're terrible.
I remember that they're not only terrible, but they're not free. I reckon it was the case when I was looking on that website out of interest back in 2016, and I saw a welding course. Well, welding in itself is a profitable ordeal here, but when I saw that it costs 5,000 lei, which is 1,000 euros by today's money in Romania. Well, trust me, anybody who has 5,000 lei disposable money right now will not look on that bloody website.
Yeah, but I guess it can be paid in installments, and quite frankly, 5,000 lei isn't necessarily that much money, considering just how much you can make out of being a certified welder.
It is true, but here, see the alternative. Probably there weren't as many alternatives then, but there are many alternatives now.
Yeah.
where you can go to trade schools where either the cost is heavily subsidized by the companies themselves that sponsor the trade schools. Where you pay almost close to nothing, rather than have to pay in installments, and you could actually end up with a job at the end. Yeah, because that's the aspect that if you go through the state apparatus to get a certification, you're not guaranteed a job after that, because you still have to look for it for yourself. In the trade school, you already recruited before you finish your course.
Yeah, the state pretends to look for a job for you, but it rarely succeeded because, the state.
It's the same principle.
Something was done.
Something was done. We respect the Constitution. We provide the training, but that's it. It doesn't say we're going to provide you a job after that.
We did something. Article 36, workers have the right to a remuneration commensurate to the quantity and quality of their work in any case such as to ensure them and their families a free and dignified existence. Maximum daily working hours are established by law. Workers have the right to a weekly rest day and paid annual holidays. They cannot waive this right. Now that's interesting. So how does this function when it comes to, I don't know, the fire department, or the railway workers, or the hospitals? You know, I mean, do those people get to waive the right of paid annual holidays? Because last time I checked, you know, the railway stations were still open on December the 25th, for instance. I don't know. So I guess it's not really that way, isn't it? It's much more closer to the system that is used in Romania, namely that you just get paid more if you work on an annual holiday. But what I'm saying is that, again, why is this in the Constitution? I mean, why should the Constitution describe how many annual holidays or these kinds of details of the labor code, which shouldn't even be in the labor code, should be negotiated by individuals in the contracts? Also, what's a free and dignified existence?
Well, I consider free and dignified existence to live in a castle and have a dozen servants. Can you, the state, provide that to me? It's dignified by my own standard.
Yeah, and have a yacht parked in my personal port at the edge of the castle. I mean, that's my free and dignified existence. Without the yacht, I feel I'm oppressed and living in a dictatorship. So, can I have my Gibbs, please? Also, same thing, the Constitution says remuneration commensurate to the quantity and quality of their work. Okay, but that's not something for the state to decide. There is no moral way for the state to have any opinion on this, but also legally. I mean, how would the state determine this? I guess by means of minimum wage. But then again, you know, even in the case of the minimum wage, which is in itself a racist and immoral policy. Let's not forget the origins of the minimum wage. But even then, I mean, you know, if I want to work for, I don't know, 3 euros an hour in the mine, who the fuck is the state to tell me I shouldn't? You know, because there is also the opposite example. I mean, we gave the example with my castle and my private port and the yacht there, but there are also people whose opinion about a free and dignified existence may indeed be very, very low, much lower than the middle class, right? So, for instance, okay, there aren't those in Italy necessarily, but there are quite a few in Portugal, for instance, who live out of the commerce of things that are brought by the sea. Those people are very, very poor. You know, their opinion about a free and dignified existence constitutes of a very small house that is not blown away by the wind, and they're happy. So, you know, how do you square all of those? Because, you know, people are not equal. I know that constitutionalists in Italy like to think so, but they're just not. Article 37. There you go, some feminist bullshit for you. Where working women are entitled to equal rights and for comparable jobs, equal pay as men, working conditions must allow women to fulfill their essential role in the family and ensure appropriate protection for the mother and child. The law establishes the minimum age for paid labor. The Republic protects the work of minors by means of special provisions and guarantees them the right to equal pay for equal work. Okay, so it's slightly more enlightened than some US states, which do not allow minors to work at all, which is terrible. So at least this one recognizes that kids do go to work, so I guess it's slightly more enlightened than that. But then it kills any chance of minors to actually work by insisting that they have equal pay for equal work. Now look,
what do children exactly know that is comparable to an adult, so that you can at least have the expectation to have equal pay for equal work?
I mean, even Prison Australia insists on a much lower minimum wage for those under the age of 21, I think. precisely for this reason.
Yeah, and the UK as well has complete ratification related to the minimum wage law, also known as the national living wage, which is again a new invention it's been existing only since 2014. So imagine how fun it was before then, when the state wasn't with its nose in people's business. You have from ages 14 to 18 a set of minimum pounds per hour, then from 18 to 21 or 22 another set, and then you have from 20 up until 25 another set of minimum wage.
Yeah, so again, first of all, this shouldn't be, I mean, the last part, the third paragraph of Article 37 shouldn't even exist. And also this thing, I mean, I understand, okay, equal salarization between the sexes, that exists in most constitutions. It shouldn't, but okay, fair enough. But then working conditions must allow women to fulfill their essential role in the family and ensure appropriate protection for the mother and child. Thanks to that article in the Constitution, I, as potential investor and employer in Italy, I'm like, okay, we don't employ women, period.
But then you will breach the equal rights of work for women.
No, not really, because it says only if they are employees, they're subjected to this. If they're not, you know, if your salary is zero because you don't work for me, then this doesn't apply. I mean, that's the part that so many socialists and left-leaning feminists, and they don't really understand. Whenever they push for bullshit like this, they effectively they harm women, because it becomes less profitable to employ women to begin with. So unless it's a woman of extraordinary abilities or an exceptional individual, the right path for any employer that wants to still have a business tomorrow is not to employ. Hiring even a less competent man it may end up being a superior decision, business-wise.
Yeah, especially since, just as in the case it is in Italy, but like in a lot of other countries, especially the US and the UK and Canada and the European Union and many other countries. So some of the biggest business expenses are expenses with employees. Those represent the biggest thing. So this is another thing that's absolutely infuriating. Also, sort of related to this, talking about equal rights. Not only that, it's redundant to say that working women have the same rights as men when it's regarding working and salary. Well, it already says that in one of the first articles we've read, is that citizens are equal under the law, whether they're men or women. That's already self-explanatory.
Or otherkins. All right. Article 39, the trade unions may be freely established. No obligations may be imposed on trade unions other than registration at local or central offices according to the provision of the law. A condition for registration is that the statutes of the trade unions establish their internal organization on a democratic basis. Registered trade unions are legal persons. They may, through a unified representation that is proportional to their membership, enter into collective labor agreements that have a mandatory effect for all persons belonging to the categories referred to in the agreement. So basically, it's not a right-to-work state. Italy, in other words, right? It's not a right-to-work state. So further reasons to divest from it. I mean, this probably explains also why it is the sick man of Europe, economically speaking. It has been for decades already, because it's so deeply unfriendly to normal functioning of the economy. I mean, what if tomorrow the janitors, my janitor is okay, my friend's janitor is also okay, but janitors from Milan may establish a union, and they end up signing up all of the janitors in 2 or 3 Italian regions, and then they end up in a collective agreement through the state for a minimum wage for janitors to be, 50 euros an hour. And then, my janitor is still okay and maybe doesn't want to bankrupt me by imposing such a fee on me. But then some asshats from the labor department come in and do an inspection and say, oh, but look, you're only paying your janitor 5 hours an hour.
€5 an hour.
5 euros an hour, yeah. So how is that possible? And I get a 10,000 euro fine for not observing a collective agreement that nobody asked me about. Because, you know, me as the employer who's paying for all of this shit, can you at least ask?
Yeah, but again, this is another thing that by the socialists is already in the territory of the arcane. Yes, employees and their employers, especially when it's about small companies or such tiny agreements, like I would employ 1 or 2 people to do something for me. The discussion is pretty open. Much open than the socialists believe. Okay, if you say that you want this one, okay, let's negotiate. But if you come with bigger expectations or ridiculous ones, I'm gonna be upfront with you and say, well, I can't exactly pay you this much, because if I were to pay you this much, just look at how much money I haven't made this month. If I was to pay you the amount that you wish, well, then I wouldn't have a job, but you wouldn't have a job either.
Yeah,
and also that other guy that I employed, who was also your colleague, will no longer have a job if you start doing this.
Yeah, especially in small and medium enterprises, you know, those smaller than 50 employees or smaller than 50 people, and especially these ones with 2 or 3 or 5 people in them, the books are pretty open for those on the inside. So it's state regulation is so detrimental. That's why you see fellow socialists, by the way, who are always complaining that you know, in Romania, for instance, they've been trying to re-establish a labor kind of labor party, and they keep on failing for 32 years. And if you watch through their forums, they're always shocked, I tell you, that they try to attract employees, and the employees be like, I know my boss can't pay me more, so, you know, all of that is bullshit, fuck off, mate. And they're like, how dare the employees have more solidarity with the exploitative capitalists than with the labor movement? Well, because they're not stupid, that's why.
Yep.
And, you know, Italy is having a much smaller, still big of course, but a much smaller SME sector than almost everyone else in the European Union. Now I understand why.
Yeah, which is ironic, considering that countries centered around tourism, looking here at Spain, Greece, Cyprus,
Albania,
Jordan. Yeah, but okay, let's not talk about Jordan, but let's look at countries which have similar-ish laws and ways of organizing. Well, countries centered around tourism or tourism as a significant economic sector tend to also have a lot of SMEs. Not in the case of Italy, apparently.
Not in the case of Italy, yes. Of course, you know, for instance, Greece also has a lot of socialistish labor laws, but they were a bit smarter and put an asterisk, well, except for those in tourism, because really,
yeah, special interest sector.
Because really, you can't really have the same set of laws for, I don't know, large-scale factories with 5,000 employees owned by a transnational corporation, and then apply the same set of laws for a mom-and-pop store selling pizza in Venice. I mean, it's just not feasible. But Italy keeps on trying because they persist. Article 40, the right to strike shall be exercised in compliance with the law. Now, here's a common cancer with the Romanian constitution, just like I don't understand why the right to strike has to be written down in the constitution. Same thing, I don't understand why Italians do this. At least in Romania, the logic being that striking was also forbidden under communism, so it was one of those wounds that had to be healed somehow. And a lot of people were very happy in '91 that the right to strike was laid down in the constitution. It was rarely used after 1997, but you know. Article 41, private economic enterprise is free. It may not be carried out against the common good or in such a manner that could damage safety, liberty, and human dignity. And more recently, they also added the environment, I guess.
Alla salute doesn't also mean health.
Yes, the health and the environment. The law shall provide for appropriate programs and controls so that public and private sector economic activity may be oriented and coordinated for social purposes and the environment and environmental purposes. Those one with the environment and health were added just a few weeks ago. There was no referendum on it, of course, because it's the constitution with the terms of service. Again, the law shall provide for appropriate programs and control so the private sector economic activity may be coordinated for social purposes and environmental purposes. So I guess for environmental purposes being Green New Deal kind of BS. And for social purposes, again, this is very Giovanni Gentile type of speech, right? The moral progress of the society through the private sector, through corporations. I mean, why don't we just go ahead and re-establish the Chamber of Corporation as well? Because, you know, at least if you're going to coordinate their activities for the moral progress of society, give them a say, but openly into the process. I mean, you know, I'm just saying. Again, such provisions do exist in the legislation of multiple EU countries, but it's legislation, which means
it's not constitution.
Which means you still get a shot at lobbying or voting a different politician and amend the laws routinely, and they get changed.
But you can't go into lobbying because lobbying is illegal because it's you're trafficking influence.
Okay. Yes, there is this kind of hypocrisy, not just in Romania, but in Romania specifically, it is explicitly illegal. It's called influence trafficking. Of course, it's never enforced because how are you going to do that? Because again, the law says that if it criminalizes paid lobbying. But it doesn't criminalize ideological lobbying, which is what I do routinely. So, you know, technically speaking, I'm not breaking the law because I'm not getting paid to lobby for conservative policy. I do it because I believe conservative policy generally speaking.
And you're not financing politicians to further your...
the
things that you're lobbying for.
I teach them how to win. It's a much more bigger and much more important resource to have someone teaching you how to win than money.
Yeah. Here is also another thing. The first paragraph: it may not be carried out against the common good, or such a manner that could damage safety, liberty, and human dignity. Well, this is also again
and health and the environment.
Yeah, health and the environment. Well, this is not only vague but also dangerously vague. So, so what exactly is against the common good? How you define it in a legal scenario? That company X is doing something against the common good. What exactly are they doing? Okay, in cases like I don't know the way factories did in Japan with throwing overboard into the ocean hundreds of thousands of tons of mercury. That's a pretty fully understandable scenario. But what if, for example, in a city, a private company would open a mine that will offer jobs? Well, that one is also not against the common good and the environment because mining is a dirty sector. But again, those people in that
in favor of the common good for that community.
Yeah,
who probably needs jobs, considering how many depressed communities exist in Italy. I mean, entire villages are up for auction, for crying out loud. Because that's the other thing that probably many of our American friends don't know. Yeah, sure, on paper looked a bird's eye view at their economic numbers. Italy doesn't look that bad. But once you zoom in, and by zooming in I mean going there and start going around the country, it's incredibly depressed economically.
Yeah,
think Flint, Michigan, but significantly worse.
Extrapolate at the country's level.
Yeah, and extrapolate at a country level.
Yeah, and again, it would be sort of understandable if Italy was in the case of just like Eastern European countries or North Korea is, where they sort of depended on a system and had a totalitarian political sort of organization. But Italy wasn't under communism, but they still ended up having communistic symptoms in
Yes.
their society and their economy.
Well, in fairness, they are now under a totalitarian type of organization, so there's that. It's just a totalitarianism with a smiley face, but there's that.
Totalitarianism with a human face.
With the human face, yes.
We're
Yes.
back to Khrushchev's time.
Article 42. Have we ever left Khrushchev time? Property is public or private. Economic assets may belong to the state, to public bodies, or to private persons. Private property is recognized and guaranteed by the law, which prescribes the ways it is acquired, enjoyed, and its limitations, so as to ensure its social function and make it accessible to all. Really? So, can I make your backyard accessible to all of my friends? In the cases provided for by the law and with provisions for compensation, private property may be expropriated for reasons of general interest. So I guess this is eminent domain. The law establishes the regulations and limits of legitimate and testamentary inheritance and the rights of the state in matters of inheritance. So I guess the positive part is that they do have testamentary inheritance, which we don't in Romania, and we should. The negative part is this, so as to make it accessible to all. Really? So, again, can I make Romano Prodi's backyard accessible to all of my friends? We have a few things to say to him, and I don't think he can hear us from the streets. So maybe we can all invade his backyard and make his property accessible to all. Is that okay? I'm just saying. Article 43. For the purposes of the common good, the law may establish that an enterprise or a category thereof, through a preemptive decision or compulsory purchase authority with provision of compensation reserved to the government, a public agency, a workers' or a users' association, provided that such enterprise operates in the field of essential public services, energy sources, or monopolies and are of general interest. Okay, so basically, the state can forcibly buy businesses, right?
The right to nationalization.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But then a workers or a users association, so that would mean what? You can nationalize an NGO?
NGO of all the politicians.
I mean, because that's the part that I didn't understand. Within a field of essential public services, energy sources, or monopolies, and are of general public interest. Okay, I understand it in monopolies, I understand it in energy sources. Energy is a strategical resource. Almost all sane in the head countries retain such such privileges. But generally in the field of essential public services, well, what's that?
Please define essential public service.
Can I deem Draghi's living room as an essential public service? I'm just saying. Article 44. For the purpose of ensuring the rational use of land and equitable social relationships, the law imposes obligations and constraints on private ownership of land. It sets limitation to the size of property according to the region and the agricultural area, encourages and imposes land reclamation and conversion of latifundia and the reorganization of farm units, and assists small and medium-sized properties. The law makes provisions for mountain areas. Okay, I understand the part with the mountain areas. What I don't understand is this one, the size of property. Well, what's the business of the state? How big my property is? If I pay my taxes on it, fuck off. And if I bought it legitimately, then really fuck off.
There's a purchase agreement. Somebody or someone who owned the land received money for it, and now I came in the ownership of the land. Was the business of the state to limit the said size of property, and that okay, probably in some really niche scenarios, but those will also be initially treated as a jurisprudence level and at a local level, not at the constitutional level. Okay, let's say just like it was the case with the cathedral in Bucharest, where pretty much so the St. Joseph's Cathedral in Bucharest had a curious case about 20-ish years ago, where there's right next to it there's a humongous 20-ish story business building that never went into operation. that could be a case where I can see that it will be you'll be interesting to
but
implement.
that one affects the structure of the church.
Exactly. In the case of affecting structures of historical monuments and other constructions behind it, I can understand. But again, I can understand it at a local level and at a jurisprudence level, not at the constitutional level, for the state to set limitations the way it wishes.
Yeah, I mean,
on size and height and surface.
Here it says according to the region and the agricultural area. Then shouldn't this be decided by the regions, or by the town halls, or maybe at the jurisprudence level, in the case that there is something in which the law is unclear, have it escalated all the way up to Cassazione? Oh well, by doing that it will require 25 years of litigation. So they do have a point. You have to remember that the people who wrote this constitution and who keep on amending it, they're also keenly aware of just how long it takes.
Yeah. Well, so instead of reforming the judicial,
which is hard, then reform the TOS because it's easier.
Well, nothing is easy. Justinian, when he reformed the laws of the Byzantine Empire, that wasn't an easy job, and he had 3 really wise people around him in order to make some sense of the entire bullshittery that was part of the administration of the empire. It's not easy, but again, choosing pretty much will be the proper English term for krpele.
Patching around.
It was choosing patches, like we're going to amend the constitution because we know that our judicial system is fucked up and it needed a reform probably 2 decades ago, and we still haven't done it because it's hard. Yeah. So we're gonna amend the constitution infinitely in order to
ad infinitum.
Ad infinitum.
To keep on with the Latin heritage. Article 45: the Republic recognizes the social function of cooperation of a mutually supportive and non-speculative nature. What does that mean? The law promotes and encourages cooperation through appropriate means and ensures its character and purposes through appropriate checks. What does that mean? The law safeguards and promotes handicrafts.
It could be referring to several unions, just like the guilds from old. That's what this article may refer to.
I see. So it basically, okay, fair enough. But then again, couldn't you? This one should have been properly spelled out, but it's not, and others that should not have been spelled out are. The whole constitution is a patchwork, because the language of Article 45 sounds like it was written 100 years ago. So this one is more obviously archaic, in addition to being arcane, whereas others are written by Greta Thunberg. So 46, for the economic and social betterment of workers and in harmony with the needs of production. The Republic recognizes the rights of workers to collaborate in the management of enterprises in the ways and within the limits established by law. What the fuck is this?
So are you exactly just saying that the employees should have a role in the functionality of the enterprise?
It says recognizes the rights of the workers to collaborate, not mandates. Well, I'm sorry, but in small and medium enterprises, this happens every day, and it doesn't need a constitutional amendment for it to happen.
Yeah, but it's clear that this article was not written for SMEs. It was written for the large enterprises.
Yeah, but in large enterprises, management can disagree, because again, Article 46 recognizes the right to collaborate in the management. It doesn't say that they have to, and it doesn't say that management has to agree. So why does this article exist? I guess just to have this phrase in the Constitution, right? In the harmony with the needs of production. Since when do constitutions have opinions about needs of production? I mean,
well, apparently the Italy's end citizen license agreement does.
47, the Republic encourages and safeguards savings in all forms. What? It regulates, coordinates, and oversees the operation of credit. The Republic promotes house and farm ownership and direct and indirect shareholding in the main national enterprises through the use of private savings. I guess this is the moment when we remember that the De Medici family was Italian. Again, why is this in the Constitution? Was there a moment when savings was banned? No. No.
At least not as far as we know.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess if the mafia disagrees, but then again, the mafia doesn't care about the Constitution. At least those guys are more honest about their operations. But seriously, I mean, why is this in the Constitution? It's the kind of aspect that if you recognize public enterprise as free and legal, and it is in the Article 19, I think. If you recognize private enterprise, if you recognize capitalism, then that's it. You don't have to go into such details because all of those things, all of those chips fall into place without having the almighty, all-knowing council of the wise men who update the terms of service to tell them what they should do. Then they'll figure it out on their own because they ain't stupid. I mean, this isn't. Oftentimes, when I go through the Italian Constitution, I'm thinking, do the architects of the Italian Constitution really think all Italians are stupid? I mean, it's insulting the intelligence of the people. Now, of course, our Italian friend, our black-pilled Italian friend, will say, "Well, no, it's not insulting because they are stupid." But I really disagree. I don't think.
But at least let's give the benefit of the doubt that yeah, probably a significant chunk may be stupid. But again, if you're making the laws for the stupid, then you're in a free fall towards the INSOC territory.
Yeah, yeah, it's SOC. No, it's SOC. Title 4, Political Rights. Any citizen, male or female, who has attained majority is entitled to vote. The vote is personal, equal, free and secret. The exercise thereof is a civic duty. The law lays down the requirements and modalities for citizens residing abroad to exercise their right to vote and guarantees that this right is effective. A constituency of Italians abroad shall be established for elections of the Houses of Parliament. The number of seats of such constituency is set forth in the constitutional provision according to criteria established by law. The right to vote cannot be restricted except for civil incapacity or as a consequence of an irrevocable penal sentence or in cases of moral unworthiness as laid down by law. Now, I'll refrain from commenting on the last part because I haven't studied what exactly there is. It is defined by law, but I just didn't read it. But generally, the sound moral unworthiness. Okay.
So, well, yeah, again, what does moral unworthiness mean exactly in legal terms? So,
in fairness, they do have a definition for that. I just
they did have a definition, but again, looking at the fact that how long was it ago? 2 or 3 years ago, Mussolini's granddaughter, I think.
Alessandra
Mussolini ran for ruling constituency somewhere in the mountains. Whose name I forget. So you're not gonna ban the Mussolini family for holding public office.
No, and also she ran for a seat in the local council of Rome and got the most preferential votes. I mean,
so there you go. So definitely the Mussolini name and family is not morally unworthy.
Yeah, but then again, it would mean that you would ban someone just because of their name. So I guess that should be haram in and of itself, shouldn't it be? Because just because she's the granddaughter of a dictator, that doesn't necessarily make her. Now, admittedly, Alessandra Mussolini is a loon, but a different kind of loon. She's a feminist loon, so there's that. But then again, we've seen a lot worse than that in Italy. I mean, let's not forget Franco Frattini, the mayor of Rome, who, after winning election, the local election in Rome, he marched into Rome with a lot of Roman salutes. So there's that. I mean, I'm just saying. Article 50, any citizen may present petitions to Parliament to request legislative measures or to express collective needs. Yes, but is it an effective process? No.
Something was done, there is a process.
Something was done, therefore there is a process. Now, petitioning the Parliament is only making sense if it incurs obligations. Right, so for instance, like it is in the UK, there is a petition. If it gathers enough signatures, the House of Commons is forced to debate it. Or in the case of Romania, if you write a legislative process, if you gather enough signatures, admittedly you have to gather them physically, but if you do, the Parliament is forced to debate on it and vote on it. So that's an effective process. Article 50 is quite silent on this. So basically, yeah, you can write to the Parliament, okay, and the Secretary of the Parliament says, oh, this is cute, goes through the shredder. Something was done. Electricity has been consumed to power the shredder. Or maybe if you send it on decent enough paper, maybe they'll use it as toilet paper, right? As culo papier. How would that be in Italian? 51. Any citizen of either sex, you can see how transphobic this constitution is eligible for public offices and elected positions on equal terms according to the conditions established by law. To this end, the Republic shall adopt specific measures to promote equal opportunities between women and men. That's terrible. The law may grant Italians who are not resident in the Republic the same rights as citizens for the purposes of access to public offices and elected positions. Whoever is elected to a public function is entitled to the time needed to perform that function and to retain a previously held job. Now, this one is terrible because let's say I'm the CEO of, I don't know, Alitalia or whatever, right?
CEO of the Beretta factory.
Okay, yeah, that glows a bit, but okay, fair enough. So and then I get elected, I don't know, for Senate, where the term is a bit longer.
Yes, the Second Amendment of the Italian Party.
Yeah, then what? I mean, Beretta Incorporated will have to keep my CEO seat warm for the many years I'm a senator in case I come back. Seriously? or even better, I get elected president, so at least 7 years. So 7 years, I mean, the whole world can change in 7 years. There's no way you can seriously apply this provision of Article 51 in the Italian Constitution consistently. I mean, sure, I guess it can be applied in the case of, I don't know, I'm the chef of a small restaurant or whatever, maybe. But even there, I mean, what if the restaurant isn't in business by the time I come back? Then what? Will the state be responsible to give me a different job?
Yeah, and here is also another curious one. The one that the law may grant Italians who are not resident of the Republic the same rights as citizens for the purposes of access to public office and elected positions. Because this is one thing I didn't understand clearly related to the mayor of Timișoara, who is a German national who does not have Romanian citizenship, but he ended up being mayor of a city.
Yes. Unfortunately, the court did not look on the grounds of the case. There was a court case against him. According to a treaty for the functioning of the European Union, any EU national can run in any local election of any EU state, provided that he or she has been living in that territorial unit for at least, I think, 5 years or 3 or whatever. I guess they're established by the state. And Fritz was fulfilling that one. What we don't know is that papierenzi. We don't know if he had the correct de facto. He was definitely fulfilling that obligation. But was he fulfilling it de jure?
Yeah, but exactly. Where's the clear evidence that he has actually been living?
What we're saying, Dominic Fritz, Achtung, papierenzi.
Yeah. So this one definitely an amendment which was brought by the Treaty of Functionality of the European Union, brought in.
But in Italy, nobody talked about it because it's just the terms of service. So it gets quietly
but again, how exactly it gets implemented? Well, does it get implemented so I could suddenly decide, I'm gonna move to Italy, and then I'm gonna stay fuck knows where for 5 years. Then I'm gonna run for elected office. I'm gonna smell what the electorate wants in that local area, and then I'm gonna run for mayor's position or a senator for that province.
If we live long enough, maybe we'll upon retirement we'll do politics in Italy. By that time it will become honky enough that at age 75, when we've already achieved whatever, it'd be like, hey, what the fuck, why not honk?
Let's survive until then, and then we'll see.
52. The defense of the country is a sacred duty for every citizen. Military service is obligatory within the limits and the manner set by law. Its fulfillment shall not prejudice a citizen's job nor the exercise of political rights. The organization of the armed forces shall be based on the democratic spirit of the republic. This one is openly defied. There is no military service in Italy.
Well, it says here that military service is obligatory within the limits and the manner set by law. So it
could be zero.
Exactly. It could be zero, just like it is, because this one was one of the conditions that Romania had to get rid of when it joined the European Union, not have compulsory military service.
When we joined NATO.
When we joined NATO?
Yes, compulsory service was abolished in 2005, less than a year.
Yeah, it was abolished in 2005, but de facto it got implemented in 1st of January 2007, along with entry in the EU.
Yes, but it was a NATO requirement, becoming a professional military.
So the article says that the defense of the country is a sacred duty, but who are you going to defend it with average citizens?
Yes, and now, admittedly, in the case of Italy, there are additional problems, such as the median age of the country being like 49 or something like that. So there aren't that many military-aged people in the country to begin with. So that can be an issue as well. But okay, fair enough. 53. Every person shall contribute to public expenditure in accordance with their ability. The tax system... capability, you're right. The tax system shall be progressive. Now that's weird. Why would you have very niche economic policy
in the Constitution?
I mean, and that's quite unique. I don't remember any other kind, and I've read dozens of constitutions. I don't remember any other country having this in the constitution. Why? Because flat tax versus progressive taxation is an economic debate, a policy debate that is dependent on, yes, worldview and the current facts of the country's economy. So, for instance, I don't go into this debate because a flat tax of 16% can be good, but what's better? A progressive tax system with the minimum rate of 0 and the maximum rate of 5.
Yeah.
So, it's a false debate, progressive taxation versus...
it's definitely, it's an economic policy debate, not a constitutional debate. And again, there shouldn't be something in the constitution of any country at all.
Yeah, but then again, we're committing the mistake of thinking that it's a constitution here. We're reading the terms of service, so it's easy to amend it. All citizens, 54, have the duty to be loyal to the Republic and uphold its constitution and laws, provided that they know it, I guess. Those citizens to whom public functions are entrusted have the duty to fulfill such functions with discipline and honor, taking an oath in those cases established by law. Okay, but the problem is that since you're changing the constitution so many times, basically yearly, I may have the duty to be loyal to the Republic and uphold the constitution, but do I know the constitution? What has changed lately?
Well, again, they'll invoke that Roman principle that not knowing the law does not absolve you from the consequences of not knowing it, breaking it. Yeah, very clever. What can I say?
Yeah, but then again, that Roman principle had an idea that the law is quite consistent and it doesn't change multiple times a year in fundamental ways. But for instance, the civil code in the Roman Empire changed like 2 times in more than 300 years.
Exactly.
It makes perfect sense to then to apply the concept that you should have
exactly.
known it.
I think in the case of Italy, every citizen should need a law degree in order to keep in touch and
Just to keep up with the amendments.
to keep up with everything, with amendments to the constitution. God knows how often civil codes change, or all sorts of code, penal, administrative, civil, labor. Stuff like that.
Yeah, whenever I complain about the legislative changes in Romania, I remind myself that Italy exists. For instance, in the Romanian, we had a discussion about some recent change in the penal code, and there was a change that I had simply forgotten about it, and I kept on insisting, no, it is the way I'm saying, and someone else was pointing out to me, no, it was changed in 2020, and then, God damn it, they change it too often.
And then we have that honk called the fiscal code that changes every year based on the whims of whoever is in the parliament at that point.
In fairness, the tax code changes in the US every 2 years as well, depending on who is in the parliament. So
it's true, but at least there are some things kept consistent, and there aren't major changes that need pretty much a complete rethinking of.
Your fiscal strategy,
or the fiscal strategies. Here, this is the problem that has plagued Romania for at least 20 years. With the fiscal code, probably the last major reform was done under Năstase, and then
under Boc,
and then under Boc, well, to a small extent. But the rest of things changed still significantly to a point that any company that you wanna establish here, you can't make a strategy for more than 2, probably 3 years, because the fiscal code changes, and then there are suddenly new things, and there are new procedures. It was the case with the tax forms. Back in 2016, you had I think 7 different types of tax forms that you were obligated, if you were part of the category, to fill them and file them to the anafora oamenilor de hoți to the tax authorities, and then suddenly 2 years later, then there's only one form. So that's
then again 3,
and then again so you go from 6 to 1 to 3, and again each one has its own separate prerogatives and requirements.
And if you file it wrongly, it's your fault. Article 55, Parliament consists of the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. Parliament shall meet in joint session only in cases established by this constitution. So now the constitution is also the rules of engagement for the houses of... What? I mean, don't get me wrong, there are many other constitutions in Europe that do establish certain things that must be debated under a joint session. But those are, you have to do this. Everything else is the prerogative of the parliament. So the parliament can establish to debate everything under a joint session if they want to, or nothing else. But to say here that all joint sessions must be established by this constitution, okay. 56, Chamber of Deputies is elected by direct and universal suffrage. Number of deputies is 630, 12 of which are elected in the overseas constituency. All voters who have attained the age of 25 on the day of elections are eligible to be deputies. This was changed.
Yeah, this was changed now
to 18.
Yeah.
The division of seats among the electoral districts, with the exception of the number of the seats assigned to the overseas constituency, is obtained by dividing the number of inhabitants of the Republic, as shown by the latest general census, by 618, and by distributing the seats in proportion to the population in every electoral district on the basis of whole shares and the highest remainders. Yes, the number of deputies was also shrunk. I think it's 40 now. Again, the terms of service have
actually 400, not
400. Yes, sorry, not 40. 400. Yes, the terms of service have been updated, but not on the English version of the TOS. So, so there's that. Also, this is something that I don't understand. Why should the Constitution say how many deputies should be there? How many members of the Parliament should be there? Shouldn't that be decided by the electoral law and changed accordingly whenever the need emerges. 57. The Senate is elected on a regional basis with the exception of the overseas constituency. The the number of senators to be elected is 315, 6 of whom are elected in the overseas constituency. This one was lowered as well, I think, to 200. No region may have fewer than 7 senators. Molise shall have 2, Valle d'Aosta 1. The division of seats among regions, with the exception of the overseas constituency, is made in proportion to the population, blah blah. Okay, fair enough. Senators are elected by universal and direct suffrage by voters who are 25 years of age. I think this
one also changed
to 18. Voters who have attained the age of 40 are eligible to be elected to the Senate. I don't think this one changed. I think
it didn't change.
This one was...
it was only the voting age that got changed.
Yes, and the voting and the age to be elected in the Chamber of Deputies, which was also lowered from 25 to 18. 59. Former presidents of the Republic are senators by right and for life unless they renounce the office. The President of the Republic may appoint 5 citizens who have honored the nation through their outstanding achievements in the social, scientific, artistic, and literary fields as life senators. Okay. This thing with the life senators, it has a lot of Pinochet Chile vibes. Me gusta. The problem is that, and we'll see as we progress here, it just gives too much power to the president. I mean, that's one of the major flaws of this constitution. It just gives too much power to the president, even though Italy is not a presidential republic. I mean,
yeah, and again, let's not forget the president isn't elected by the people; it's elected by the parliament.
By the parliament. So basically, the president can appoint who elects him, kind of like the Canadian Senate, which is entirely appointed by the prime minister. And 63. Each house shall elect a president and the bureau from among its members. When parliament meets in joint session, the president and the bureau are those of the Chamber of Deputies. So basically, the Senate is there just for show. I mean, they set a higher age bar. You have to be at least 40 to be elected in the Senate. So it's set up to be the more deliberative chamber. But then when it matters, it does not have the superior power rests with the Chamber of Deputies. Then why have the Senate? Serious question.
Well, as a consultative body, maybe.
I mean, and this is a problem that I have with the Romanian electoral system as well, for the exact same reasons. But at least with the Romanian electoral system, the Senate does take precedence in joint sessions, so at least that. But the same thing, I mean, you know, the Senate, I think France is the only one that does the Senate right, and the Netherlands. Right? The Senate should not be directly elected. It should be elected either through an electoral college, like France does, or through an indirect vote of the presidents or of regions or whatever, like the Netherlands does it. Precisely because if it is a deliberative body, then it should be a little bit more remote or removed from the temporary passions of the publics, as the founding fathers said, who, by the way, also framed the Senate as a deliberative body until, well, I think it was the 17th Amendment, or when suddenly the Senate was no longer elected by the governors, by the states, essentially. But again, you know, the Senate should represent the regions or the states or whatever. That's why you have a Chamber of Deputies. That's where the people are being representative. Then the subunits, and especially in Italy, where it's de facto a federal republic, where the regions have so much power, they do need to be represented separately, precisely to curb the centralist abuse of Rome. But they're not. 64. Each house adopts its own rules by absolute majority. The sittings are public. However, each of the house may decide to convene a closed session. The decisions of each house are not valid if the majority of the members is not present, and if they are not passed by a majority of those present, save for those instances where the Constitution prescribes a special majority. But members of the government, even when not members of the parliament, have the right, and when requested, the obligation to attend the settings. They shall be heard every time they so request. I understand the part with they have the obligation to attend when requested, but they shall be heard every time they so request? No. Quite the opposite. The parliament should be the place where the government gets cursed at. All right, they don't get to no. We'll listen to you whenever whenever we're in the mood for it. Right. And so basically, a member of the cabinet has more power in the Italian parliament than the Queen of England has in the British Parliament. I mean, what? I mean, Elizabeth has to ask for permission to speak to the Parliament.
Oh, yeah, but
and permission can be denied.
Yeah, but that's a different story. It's really it's more akin linked to. I don't remember but I'm pretty sure that there was a king back in the 1800s or 1900s that also was unceremoniously refused when he spoke against the two unified houses of the parliament, again for I don't know what other issue. And then what he did is that he meant his guards to barge into the Commons and the Lords in joint session, and ever since then, because there's a ceremony that was adopted, I think 80 or 90 years ago, where the kings or the queen's chancellor, I think, has to knock at the door of the parliament inside in order to be attending it.
Yes,
properly.
but it's a lot older than that. It's like in the 1600s, because so many chancellors of the monarch have knocked on the door in the same place that the door of the House of Commons has a shape of a hand. Knock here. Yes, this is the same door. But gotta love British conservatism on this one. But yeah, no, seriously. I mean, just too much deference to the government, which is again an indirectly elected body. I mean, if it is a parliamentary republic, and that's what Italy larps at, then surely the parliament should have the primacy over everyone else. 65. The law determines the cases of disqualification with the office of deputy or senator. No one may be a member of both houses at the same time. Well, that would have been stupid. Okay. Each house verifies the credentials of its members and causes for disqualification. Okay. Each member of parliament requests the nation and represents the nation and carries out his duties without a binding mandate. Yeah, the same stupidity that is in the Romanian constitution as well. This should be changed, not just in the Italian constitution, in ours as well. No, I mean, if you're elected in an electoral district in, I don't know, Puglia region, for instance, then surely that, especially in the Chamber of Deputies, it should be a binding mandate for that electoral district. Oh yes, and recalls. I'm just saying. Yeah, it is one of the problems that continental Europe overall has. Because almost all, either it's written in the constitution or de facto it behaves like that. The parliaments of Europe are not binding enough.
When it's related to MPs.
Yes, it's one thing that Britain definitely gets right and everyone else gets wrong. Britain and the United States are the only ones that they actually get this one right. No, it should be a binding mandate to the constituency that voted for you, and the constituency should also have some mechanism to recall you, basically to fire you for being stupid in public, right? Or for any reason, or for no reason, just because they feel like it.
Yeah, they're the people that elected you. They don't have to wait 4 years or 5 years or whatever the term limit.
5 in the case of Italy.
Yeah, 5 in the case of Italy. But speaking at a larger scale, the elector doesn't have to wait for until his term expires or her term expires in order to end up punishing him or her at the ballot box next time, whenever it will be. Again, because of the memory of the electorate, which tends to skew towards being the short-ish term.
Yeah, the electorate unfortunately has the memory of an amoeba or of a goldfish. So yeah, that's why recalls are important. 70. The legislation function is exercised collectively by both houses. 71. Legislation may be introduced by the government, by a member of parliament, and by those entities and bodies so empowered by constitutional amendment law. The people may initiate legislation by proposing a bill drawn up in sections and signed by at least 50,000 voters.
That's a bar set pretty low for a country the size of Italy.
So there you go. So there is such a mechanism. I refrained myself from reading this in great detail before taping this video, precisely so Okay, so if this exists, why the hell aren't you using it more often? And 50,000 voters, that shouldn't be difficult. That's of 60 million people, I can find 50,000 people to agree with anything.
Yeah.
We can draw up the Flat Earth Society Act of 2022. Surely there are 50,000 flat earthers in Italy. I mean, you know, law of big numbers. So 50,000, it's actually a bit less than in Romania.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing.
You need 100,000 here.
Yeah.
So use it. I mean, seriously. I mean, there've been protests with hundreds of thousands in Italy. You know, if you have so many people in the street, have someone gather signatures and force the parliament to debate such proposals, because again, it becomes a matter of public record if they vote against it, and then you can, you know, knock on their doors at home. Why did you vote against it? Are you against freedom? Why?
Yeah, but at the same time, this will also be something curious to observe when related to the Italian population, how politically engaged them as citizens are, because okay, like in any other Latin peoples, they're pretty vehement political commentators, but actually engagers, how many of them are exactly in order to pull stunts like these? Oh, surely there are a few because the law of large numbers. But again, are they sufficient? And then does the population at least engage themselves with those set political engagers who could pull stunts like initiating legislations and bills to be sent to the parliament for votes and
again,
sector.
There have been protests in Italy that gathered 100,000, 200,000, and even more in the streets. So definitely 50,000 voters to sign off on an activist bill are easy to find. I mean, since you're already there, why not sign for this too? It's not difficult. So what I'm enraged about is that so few Italian activists are willing to even try. I always get this answer, no man, you can't do that in Italy. Have you tried? Because, you know, we had our own detractors here when we said, look, muzzles on the streets are unconstitutional, and trust me, they are unconstitutional. And for several months, no man, the courts will not even take the complaint into consideration. They all work together. It's impossible to do it. And lo and behold, the Constitutional Court was like, yeah, it's actually unconstitutional. Because, you know, sitting and complaining doesn't solve shit. Doing stuff may solve shit. Yes, you may fail. But what if you're not? I'm just saying, use this. I mean, even this terms of service gives you an option to troll the parliament. Use it. See what happens. Maybe you create a national scandal. Yeah, sure, maybe they ignore you. But not trying, you don't know what's going to happen. 72. A bill introduced in either house of the parliament shall, under the rules of procedure, be scrutinized by a committee and then by the whole house, which shall consider it section by section and then put it to a final vote. Also, it's a bit more of a complicated process. The rules shall establish shorter procedures to consider a bill that has been declared urgent. What? And who declares it urgent? Oh, I'll tell you. De facto, the president. So basically, the president says you have to pass this bill to see what's in it. We've heard that before. That's how you got Donald Trump. I'm just saying. They may also establish when and how the consideration and approval of bills may be referred to committees, including... Christ almighty, it's entire rules of procedures here. The ordinary procedure for consideration and direct approval is always followed in the case of bills on constitutional and electoral matters, delegating legislation, ratification of international treaties, and approvals of budgets and accounts. So basically, the president gets to meddle with... it doesn't say like that in the terms of service, but that's how it works in reality. That's how it works in reality, yes. If the government or 1/10 of the member of the House or 1/5 of the committee request it be debated on by the House itself, or then it be submitted to the House for final approvals. So basically, a small amount of people, the president, 2 or 3 cabinet members, or 10 or 15 deputies, can change entire policy, and through a sleight of hand, essentially, you can wake up with new bullshit, either into the body of law of the country or into the constitution itself.
Yeah, because again, since only parliamentarians have the right to amend the constitution, they pretty much join the rules for themselves.
Obviously. What, you're
this is the
telling me
most obvious in this
politicians
article.
aren't angels?
Yeah, so
73. Laws are promulgated by the president within 1 month of their approval. If the houses, each by an absolute majority, declare a law to be urgent, the law is promulgated within the deadline established therein. Or a law is published immediately after promulgation and comes into force on the 15th day following publication, unless such law established a different deadline. Now, the positive part, it says 15th day as opposed to 3 in the Romanian constitution. The negative part, unless such law establishes a different deadline, that means it can establish 1 day. Whereas in the Romanian constitution, yes, 3 days, unless the law establishes a longer term, but never shorter than 3 days. That's how I trolled the gendarmerie quite a bit in 2020. Because they forgot about that part. And then, of course, 2 members of the gendarmerie had to pay me half of their salaries for 6 months. You know? Thank you. To the court, not to the gendarmerie. So basically the parliamentarians can also declare a law to be urgent. Oh, that's nice. So not only Mattarella can do that, but they need an absolute majority, whereas Mattarella can just pull the majority out of his arse. 74. The President of the Republic may send the Parliament a reasoned opinion to request that a law scheduled for promulgation be considered anew. If such law is passed again, it shall be promulgated, just like in Romania. A general referendum may be held to repeal in whole or in part a law, a measure having the force of law, when so requested by 500,000 voters or 5 regional councils. Wow. No referendum may be held on a law regulating taxes, the budget, amnesty or pardon, or a law ratifying an international treaty. Any citizen entitled to vote for the Chamber of Deputies has the right to vote in a referendum. The referendum shall be considered to have been carried if the majority of those eligible has voted and the majority of the valid votes has been achieved. Okay, so it's not that difficult. 500,000 voters, so that's less than 1% of the total population. It doesn't say how many in how much time you need to raise the signatures, so I'll presume it's months at the very least. Or 5 regional councils. Have you tried using this to take down sanitary fascism? And if not, why not? Surely there are 500,000 people who disagree, so they can trigger the referendum. We know for sure that there are at least 4 million. Have you looked them up and asked them to sign? I mean, really, there are, admittedly, imperfect, but there are tools provided by these terms of service to troll the leadership. And I'm sorry, but yes, okay, it's difficult to raise 500,000 signatures. Believe me, I've raised 200,000 myself. And yes, it's complicated, it's difficult. But you know, no pain, no gain. You know, politics is difficult. I know, it's easier to complain on Facebook or on Telegram, but seriously. And so basically, this is actually even better than in Romania. In Romania, you can't hold a referendum to repeal a law. You can have a referendum to put a law, but you can't hold a referendum to repeal it. Well, I guess you can make a legislative project. That law gets abolished as of right now. But
that's pretty much the backdoor way of repealing a law.
Yeah, so use this instrument, my Italian friends. Seriously, it's usable. Again, maybe it will be ignored, but what if it's not? You don't know until you try. Just like until 2018, the idea of a referendum, a people-generated referendum for a constitutional amendment, was a pure academic theory in Romania. Until 2018, when a bunch of determined motherfuckers gathered the signature and triggered the referendum. And it almost passed, by the way. It didn't, because it was boycotted by the Social Democrats, essentially. But still, it almost passed, even with all sorts of institutional shenanigans.
And detractors
Yeah.
and shills
And
everything.
shields, and yes. But even so, they showed that it's possible. Until then, it was only a theoretical discussion.
Yeah, even though hasn't that procedure existed
Since 91.
Since exactly since 1991. I was thinking it was closer to, it was actually 2001, I think.
No, since 91.
Okay.
And nobody used it because everyone just assumed that it's impossible to, and everyone will avoid organizing a referendum. Well, guess what? It didn't. It worked. Yeah, sure, it should have gathered a bit more voters, but still, it worked. 76. The exercise of the legislative function may not be delegated to the government unless principles and criteria have been established, and then only for a limited time and for specified purposes. Okay, what exactly is that limited time? So can the government, can the parliament legislate its way out of existence? Well, the answer is yes, not just in theory, but also in practice. I mean, the government has been ruling the Italian society by decree since January 2020. And allegedly, they'll stop doing that on March 31st, 2022. Okay, but still, I'm just saying. 77. The government may not, without an enabling act from the houses, issue a decree having force of law. Really? We've seen that happening quite a lot over the last 2 years. So, when the government, in case of necessity and urgency, adopts under its own responsibility a temporary measure, it shall introduce such measure to the parliament for transposition into law. During dissolution, Parliament shall be convened within 5 days of such introduction. Such a measure shall lose effect from the beginning if it is not transposed into law by Parliament within 60 days of its publication. Parliament may regulate the legal relations arisen from the rejected measure. So basically the government has ex nihilo the right to be stupid in public for 60 days without fear of censorship from the parliament. What? What? Jesus Christ, man. I mean, at least in Romania, the maximum amount the government can be stupid in public is 5 days.
Yeah.
And if the parliament decides, it can be 30 seconds. The maximum amount is placed on the parliament. If the parliament doesn't have an opinion within 5 days, then the assumption is that the government has been stupid in public.
But this is the direct consequence of not having a clear separation of powers in the state. You have the legislative playing with the playing governmental, and the judicial itself is the way it is, as we mentioned earlier, and then you get honks like these.
What the fuck, man? 81. Every year, Parliament shall pass the budget and the financial statements introduced by the government. Interim budget authority may not be granted save by law and for not longer than 4 months. The budget may not introduce new taxes and new expenditures. Any other law involving new or increased spending shall detail the means thereof. Thereof. Okay, so that aspect, no longer than 4 months, that has changed so many times. Italy routinely runs on interim budgets for years, usually, not months. So there's that. A comparable example would be Israel. Right? Israel still runs today on a budget from January 2020. Considering notice that there is nothing in the Constitution about at least a theoretical obligation to balance the budget. Of course. That's one aspect that even the United States gets it wrong. I mean, the founding fathers did not have the imagination enough to put it in the Bill of Rights, namely that the government considers itself to the gallows for not balancing the goddamn budget
Well, I can kind of understand why. It's not only the fact that they couldn't have envisioned that in 300 years there will be deficit spending to the level where the entire GDP of the country is smaller than its public debt, but also, yeah, it kind of has a pragmatic scenario, because they understood that if in case the US needed to carry a war for whatever reason, even defensive or otherwise, that war tends to be expensive, and you would have to incur an obligatory deficit.
Yes, and the founding fathers themselves ran deficits, at least for a while. So there's that. But still, I mean, there should be, and this is for all legal scholars out there, we have to find a way to impose, at least as a general objective somehow, that the budget should be goddamn balanced a little bit. Okay, fine, in the case of war, in the case of calamity, okay, fair enough. But still, within X years after the war or after the calamity, the budget should be balanced, and at least X% of the debt already paid for.
Yeah, well, in this scenario, well, probably the Italians can manage to do that, considering they have a terms of service. Not that will make a new article. The government budget has to be balanced every year, save for the exception of calamity, natural disasters, wars, invasions.
No, I'd only put war, nothing else, because there's so many natural disasters occurring in. I mean, 2 more earthquakes like the one in Aquila, and then they'll be legally running 15% deficits for 100 years.
Okay.
82. Each house of the parliament may conduct inquiries on matters of public interest. For this purpose, it shall detail from among its members a committee formed in such a way so as to represent the proportionality of existing parliamentary groups. A committee of inquiry may conduct investigation and examination with the same powers and limitations as the judiciary. So can they convict someone to prison? I guess not. So then it's not as same powers and limitations as the judiciary. The President of the Republic, 83. The President is elected by Parliament in joint sessions. 3 delegates from every region elected by the Regional Council so as to ensure that minorities are represented shall participate in the election. Valle d'Aosta will have only 1 delegate. The election of the President of the Republic is by secret ballot with a majority of 2/3 of the Assembly. After the 3rd ballot, an absolute majority shall suffice. Any citizen who has attained 50 years of age and enjoys civil and political rights can be elected President of the Republic. The office of President is incompatible with any other office. The remuneration is established by the law. The President is elected for 7 years. 30 days before the expiration of the term, the President of the Chamber of Deputies shall summon a joint session and the regional delegates to elect the new President. During dissolution of the Parliament or in the 3 months preceding dissolution, the election shall be held within the first 15 days of the first sitting of a new Parliament. In the intervening time, the powers of the incumbent President are extended. The functions of the President in all cases which the President cannot perform then shall be performed by the President of the Senate, so just like in Romania. In case of permanent incapacity or death or resignation, the President of the Chamber of Deputies shall call a new election. 87. The President is the head of state and represents national unity. The President may send messages to the Parliament. The President shall authorize the introduction to Parliament of bills initiated by the government. So basically the government cannot initiate legislation. They need permission to Mattarella. What? From Mattarella. Promulgate laws and issues decrees having force of law and regulations. Really? Really? Call a general referendum in the cases provided by the Constitution, okay. Appoint states officials in the cases provided by the law, okay. Accredit and receive diplomatic representatives and ratify international treaties which have, where required, been authorized by the Parliament, okay. The President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, shall preside over the Supreme Council of Defense, and shall make declarations of war as have been agreed by the Parliament. The President shall preside over the High Council of the Judiciary. The President may grant pardons, okay, or commute punishments. The President shall confer the honorary distinctions of the Republic. Okay, so the Article 87 is fascinating. So So the government cannot introduce legislation unless it has permission from the president. The president can issue decrees having the force of law. What? And is the president of the High Council of the Judiciary. CSM.
Yes. So yeah. Okay.
Consilio Superior de CSM is the same initials.
The Supreme Council of the Magistrates.
Yes. Yes. So basically, where's that separation of powers? So essentially, because the Supreme Council of the Magistrates, the High Council of the Judiciary, as the official translation goes, those are the chaps that also propose most of the judges in the Constitutional Court, which again, a third are appointed by the president, just like in Romania. But at least in Romania, the High Council of the Judiciary tells the president to fuck off routinely, and the president is constitutionally obliged to agree. Whereas in Italy, it's their direct boss.
Yeah, and there's also big scroll slightly higher related to the authorization to introduction of bills. So technically, if there would be a referendum or a petition brought to the parliament, so you're trying to tell me that even in that case, Mattarella could, or whoever is president, could actually ignore it?
Yeah,
this doesn't mention it. So I assume that it is a possibility.
No, because it's only bills initiated by the government. So bills initiated by the parliament or by the people are not subjected to Mattarella's authorization. However, if you manage to gather the signatures and force the parliament to vote on a bill, let's say the parliament votes to agree.
But the Mattarella will not promulgate it.
Yes, but if you've paid attention a bit earlier, I've read it's the exact same rule as in Romania. The president can disagree and sends it back to the parliament, and the parliament can pass it again and force his hand to promulgate it. But the terms are not specific, are not rigid like in the Romanian constitution. They're very fluid, so the whole process, in Romania it takes no more than 60 days if the president disagrees. Can no longer stall for more than 60 or maybe 70 days, but not more. In Italy, the process can last 7 years. Eventually, the president is forced to promulgate it, but it can take forever until it is. Not to mention that he can have his minions in some NGO to challenge it in court, and since he's the president of the Superior Court of Magistrates as well, the judiciary will do as instructed. Now, imagine if Trump had been simultaneously the chief assistant judge of the Supreme Court of the United States. To have jurisprudence at SCOTUS level written by Trump. I mean, we're laughing, but this is the real situation in Italy, and this explains a lot of the dysfunctionality that's going on in the body politic of that country. I mean, come on, man! It's just too much goddamn power invested into the president. And again, it wouldn't be such a terrible thing if the president could easily be suspended and would be elected by popular vote, but it's not the case. He's elected by the parliament and representatives of the regions, 3 per region, except one region which only gets 1. But then again, since there's more than 600 parliamentarians, what exactly is the contribution of the regions? Oh yeah, but minorities are represented. How? All the regions can vote against the president, and that president still wins.
But they are represented.
But they are represented.
Something was done.
Something was done. Amazing. A writ of the President of the Republic shall not be valid unless signed by the proposing minister, who shall be accountable for it. A writ having force of law and other writs issued by virtue of law shall be countersigned by the President of the Council of Ministers. So basically, if Mattarella has an opinion about something, let's say he wants to raise taxes, and he issues a decree and say, I don't know, VAT should be 30%. But then that is not valid until the Minister of Finance also signs But then if something goes wrong, it's not my fault, boss. It's the Minister of Finance's fault.
Yeah,
That's what the Constitution says.
Pretty much dodging responsibility at the highest level.
But institutionalizing itself.
Institutionalized responsibility dodging.
I'm sure Traian Băsescu would have loved such a constitutional amendment in our country. Maybe he wouldn't have ended up suspended twice.
But if Traian Băsescu would have been president of Romania with Italian terms of service, he wouldn't have gotten suspended because he was not elected by the people.
not to mention that suspension would have been haram to begin with. Because in the end, if things went wrong, the Minister of Internal Affairs would have been accountable for it, according to Article 89. Man, I mean, this is just...
Yeah, thank fuck we're not Italy.
Thank fuck we're not Italy. I mean, I really don't understand the Romanians who go and live in Italy. I mean, seriously, just leave that place. Come on. The President of the Republic is not responsible for the actions performed in the exercises of presidential duties, except in the case of high treason or violation of the Constitution.
The Constitution that he can change indirectly.
He can edit whenever he wants. In such cases, the President may be impeached by the Parliament in joint session with an absolute majority of its members. Okay, so it's slightly better. You need 2/3 in... oh, no, you also need a majority.
50%
50
1.
plus 1, yes.
Yeah.
In the past, it was 2/3. The first time we suspended Băsescu, it needed 2/3. And then when the USL won, they changed the rule to be... But then again, it wasn't regulated by the Constitution. It was regulated by procedure. Yeah. But it's interesting. So, except for high treason... and who's going to charge you of high treason? The Superior Council of Magistrates?
Yeah, the ones who are you're a boss of? Yeah, right. So we're pretty much in the Spider-Man meme. The other guy.
Yeah, or the violation of the Constitution. Yeah, the Constitution for which the President has admin rights and can click edit whenever he damn pleases.
Yeah, and also who's going to enforce and who's going to actually mention that the President violated the Constitution exactly?
Well, the Parliament, it says here, the President may be impeached by the Parliament in joint session. But then again, But you have to bring up the talking point, first of all, that yes, the President violated this exact part of the Constitution, and that's why we decided to begin the process of impeachment. Yeah, and then the President contests a decision at the Supreme Court, where all of the judges have been appointed by him, who will say, "Nah, actually, you're wrong. You don't understand the terms of service. No, it's not how your lying guys are saying. No, it's how we say it, and therefore your suspension is illegal. By the way, go to Gulag." So it's essentially almost impossible to impeach the president, but not in the United States way. In this case, even if you have near unanimity in society that the president has to be helicoptered, you still can't helicopter. That's terrible. 91. Before taking office, the president shall take an oath of allegiance. Yeah, of course, and he's gonna observe it. 92. The government of the Republic is made up of the president of the council and the ministers who together form the council of ministers. The president of the Republic appoints the presidents of the council of ministers and on his proposal, the ministers. So basically he proposes to himself and then he agrees and appoints the ministers.
Yes, pat on the back. I made such good choices.
Such a good choice, yes. So basically, I mean, this is kind of presidential republic thing, but without the accountability for it. It's a very similar situation. France does it the same, but in France, the president is also at fault by default when things go wrong.
Yeah, not to mention the president is elected in France compared to Italy, where he isn't by the people.
That too, yeah, and can be impeached.
Yeah,
and it has happened a few times, or can be forced.
Remember Hollande?
Yeah, I mean, if a president is being consistently stupid in public in France, as a sitting president, he can end up with an approval rate of 2%, and then he becomes smart enough and not run for re-election, like François Hollande, yes. But, or can be compelled to resign. Charles de Gaulle ended up resigning because he called for a referendum and said that he'll probably resign if he loses, and he lost spectacularly. And then you had a million French people knocking on his door. Hey, where's that resignation? We approve of your resignation, by the way. Fuck off! And he did. But that's not doable in Italy, institutionally speaking, unless, I don't know, you convince him backdoor to resign. But yeah, so basically you have all of the power as a presidential republic, but none of the accountability. There is a name for that. It's called dictatorship. 93. Before taking office, the president of the Council of Ministers and the ministers shall be sworn in by the president. Yeah, that's standard.
Well, he's gonna swear them in. What pretty much the guys he chose and he handpicked. That's the term.
Yep.
The ministers he handpicked.
94. The government must receive the confidence of both houses of the parliament. Okay, so there is one way. The parliament can say, no, these are all a bunch of fucking idiots, so fuck off. There is voted by roll call. Within 10 days of the formation, the government shall come before the parliament to obtain confidence. Wait, what? It's not immediate? Why 10 days? I mean, in Romania it's done the same day.
There has to be a story behind this that we do not know.
An opposing vote by one or both houses does not entail the obligation to resign. What? A motion of no confidence must be signed by at least a tenth of the member of the House and cannot be debated earlier than 3 days from its presentation. Okay, that one I understand. But if you go with a newly formed cabinet and the Senate says fuck off, and the House by a slim majority says, okay, I guess, does not entail the obligation to resign. What? Then how does that government govern? Because it has essentially partial legitimacy at best. Because the only legitimacy that it really has is that it's handpicked by the president, who, by the way, has zero electoral legitimacy because it's not elected by the people. What? I mean, this is ripe for abuse, essentially. Let's try to put one of our own to be the president of Italy. I mean, just imagine how many things you can do with these terms of service.
Yeah, unless the parliament becomes hostile and then they change again the terms of service because they don't like the president.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I guess we can count on the obedience. I mean, at the end of the day, the parliament is formed by Italians, the same Italians who are not burning shit down. I mean, I would be protesting basically daily just because this constitution exists. The President of the Council of Ministers and the ministers, even if they resign from office, are subject to normal justice for crimes committed in the exercise of their duty, provided authorization is given by the Senate of the Republic or the Chamber of Deputies in accordance with the norms established by constitutional law. So basically, if you want to persecute a member of the cabinet, you just fish or where you might get the majority for your illegitimate prosecution, and then ask only for that chamber. What? Jesus Christ, man, what's wrong with these people? 97. Public offices are organized according to the provision of law so as to ensure the efficiency and impartiality of the administration. Yeah,
Sounds legit.
Employment in public administration is accessed through competitive examinations, except in the cases established by law. So I guess there are situations where nepotism and corruption is outright legalized, whereas everywhere else we pretend that there is competitive examination. Come on. Anyone who has dealt with an Italian bureaucracy knows that this is fact-check bullshit. Civil servants are exclusively at the service of the nation.
The nation or the people.
The nation, yes, that's the important distinction. Capital N nation. If they are members of the parliament, they may not be promoted in their services except through seniority. Of course, the gerontophile nation of Italy. The law may set limitations on the right to become members of political parties in the case of magistrates, career military staff in active service, law enforcement officers, and overseas diplomatic and consular representatives. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. The National Council for Economics and Labor is composed, as set out by law, of experts and representatives of the economic categories in such a proportion as to take account of their numerical and qualitative importance. What? It serves as a consultative body for Parliament and the government on those matters and those functions attributed to it by law. It can initiate legislation and may contribute to drafting economic and social legislation according to the principles and within the limitations laid out by law. Yeah, so basically it's a kind of like the Legislative Council in Romania, I guess, or the Economic and Social Council. Yeah, but our Economic and Social Council is not written in the Constitution, only the Legislative Council.
Yeah, and at least these guys are consultants, so you can easily ignore them.
Yes, I mean but there is such an institution in Romania written in the Constitution called the Legislative Council, where it only says that people who understand legislative technique are to be members of the Legislative Council. How are they elected? That's the problem of the Parliament, and the rules of engagement change all the time, and that's not a problem. But they definitely don't get to initiate legislation. I mean, what?
Yeah,
imagine if the Economic and Social Council would get the right to initiate legislation in Romania. I mean, that would be top tier honk all day long.
Yeah, it's okay, especially considering the ideas they got.
Yeah, which is why they're routinely ignored in this country.
Exactly.
But here you're not allowed to ignore them because they can initiate legislation. Christ almighty. And you have to stay awake. If you're an MP, you have to be awake every single day to make sure you vote against their bullshit. And they only have to win once. Christ almighty. 100. Council of State is a legal, administrative, consultative body, and it oversees the administration of justice. The Court of Accounts exercises preventative control. Yeah, that's the same as in Romania. The law ensures the independence from the government of the two bodies. Okay, so the Court of Accounts functions identically as in Romania. Okay, good. Council of State is a legal arm that it oversees the administrative of justice, but it's consultative. Why? Because the president is the chief of the, the court of magistrates.
Exactly. You cannot have people...
no, the Council of State should have the same prerogatives as the Court of Accounts. It should have executive power. And yes, of course, be independent from the government.
But you can't have anybody disagreeing with Il Comandante.
Yeah.
To not use the other word that starts with D.
That starts with D, yeah. Considering how old Mattarella is, he was around with the one when the one with D was there. Amazing. Amazing. 104. The judiciary is a branch that is autonomous and independent of all other powers, except that it's run by the president.
But it's not.
The High Council of the Judiciary is presided over by the President of the Republic. This constitution is getting repetitive as well. The first president and the general prosecutor of the Court of Cassation are members by right. 2/3 of the members are elected by all the ordinary judges belonging to various category, and 1/3 by Parliament in joint session from among university professors of law and lawyers with 15 years of practice. The Council elects a vice president from among those members designated by the Parliament. Elected members of the Council remain in office for 4 years and cannot be immediately re-elected. They may not, while in office, be registered in professional roles, nor serve in Parliament or on a regional council. Yeah, all fine and dandy, except for the fact that the whole show is run by the President. I mean, really? Like, really? The High Council, in accordance with the regulations, has jurisdiction for employment, assignment and transfers, promotions and disciplinary measures of judges. Disciplinary measures? I thought that's haram. Poland is being sanctioned by the Eurosayus for having a chamber that essentially is a disciplinary chamber against judges.
Yeah, don't we have the same debate here as well with
the CIJ? Yeah, section for the investigation of crimes, of criminal offenses in the judiciary. Of course, I don't know if you've been following. In Romania, they passed a bill through the Chamber of Deputies. The Senate is the decisive chamber. That says that, okay, we're going to abolish the special section. But then if you read the text that was actually abolished, that was actually passed, it not only doesn't abolish the special section, but it actually makes it more powerful. So we're pulling a Romanian one here. But hello, Eurosayus, Article 105 of the Italian Terms of Service violates the European Court of Justice diktat. I'm pretty sure Mario Draghi doesn't know about this because.
But again, it's the Italians that are going against the ECJ's rules, not the Polish.
Yeah, but either the ECG starts nagging Italy about this as well,
Which won't happen.
or if it doesn't happen, then of course Germany, Poland, and Romania, which are the ones targeted these days by the ECG, are perfectly within their rights to refuse to give a damn about what the ECG has to say about this. Easy. 106, judges appointed through competitive examination. Okay, fair enough. 107, judges may not be removed from office, they may not be dismissed or suspended from office or assigned to other courts unless by a decision by the High Council of the Judiciary. So basically, the president can relegate a judge that is inconvenient to his agenda.
He may not be removed from office.
Unless the president says so. The Minister of Justice has the power to originate disciplinary action. Minister of Justice, again, appointed by the president. Judges are distinguished only by their different functions. The state prosecutor enjoys the guarantees established in the prosecutor's favor by the provisions concerning the organization of the judiciary. Okay, fair enough. But the first part of the Article 107 is, once again, I mean, seriously, Italy should be subjected to an MCV evaluation, the mechanism for cooperation and verification of the Eurosayus, which is specifically for the normal functioning of a judiciary of a member state. I mean, they're all whining about the justice system in Poland and Romania and Bulgaria and to a certain extent Germany, but this is haram. This is really haram in comparison to anything. I mean, yeah, sure, there's corruption in our judicial system, but man, this and in the official terms of service to boot. I mean, 108, provisions concerning the organization of the judiciary are laid out by law. The law ensures the independence of judges, of special courts, of state prosecutors, and of other persons participating in the administration. The legal authorities have direct use of the judicial police. Without prejudice to the authority of the High Council of the Judiciary, the Minister of Justice has responsibility for the organization and functioning of those services involved with justice. So basically, the minister, appointed by the president, can do pretty much whatever he wants when he organizes the functioning of the services related to justice, but only insofar as he doesn't piss off the big boss, without prejudice to the authority of the High Council of the Judiciary, which is explicitly run by the President of the Republic.
Yes.
What? In the 7th grade, communism had just fallen. We were taught about the separation of powers and just how much of a good idea it is. Thank God the teacher in our classroom didn't pick the Italian constitution.
God forbid.
112. The public prosecutor has the obligation to institute criminal proceedings. How does that work? So basically the public prosecutor cannot decide that, look, upon further investigations, I don't think I'll get a conviction out of this. Therefore,
we have chosen not to prosecute.
We have chosen not. So I guess that's unconstitutional in Italy.
Yeah.
So basically, every bullshit complaint has to go through complete criminal proceedings, forcing the public prosecutor to be stupid in public.
Apparently.
Then why haven't 1 million criminal complaints been filed against Mattarella?
Probably because the president has immunity from being prosecuted.
Yeah, sure,
because he hasn't committed high treason.
Yeah, sure, but he won't be president forever. I mean, these things get deferred.
Well, that's how he's gonna exit his presidency with his feet forward.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But then again, Mario Draghi, why not? File bullshit criminal complaints against Mario Draghi. If this is the constitution that says the public prosecutor has the obligation to institute criminal proceedings, then file complaints against
Well, now we slowly understand why Italian judiciary is clogged up with cases, with not only cases that have lasted for decades, but also why they're so dysfunctional. It's not just it's not just the law itself, but there are also these procedures. Absolutely everything that from littering into the street up until murder gets an obligatory criminal proceeding, which ends up at the same time involving a judge, because it's not like you start it and then you decide later on that we haven't we cannot prosecute this for whatever reason, or we chose not to do that for whatever reason,
which happens in every normal country, I guess, except Italy
apparently. So things start to make sense.
It's amazing how many things you can learn about a country by reading its terms of service. Constitution. 117. Legislative powers shall be vested in the state and the regions in compliance with the Constitution and with the constraints deriving from EU legislation and internal obligation. The state has exclusive legislative powers in the following matters: foreign policy and international relations of the state, relations between the state and the European Union, right of asylum and legal status of non-EU citizens, immigration, relations between the republic and religious denominations, defense and armed forces, the currency, savings protection and financial markets, competition protection, foreign exchange system, state taxation and accounting system, equalization of financial resources, state bodies and relevant electoral laws, state referenda, elections to the European Parliament, legal and administrative organization of the state, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so no, the most important part here, the currency. Italy no longer has a currency. Yeah. The state does not have the state has exclusive legislative powers. That may be true in theory. In reality, Frankfurt has exclusive legislative powers over the Italian currency.
Yeah, it's probably they refer to the currency as what sort of currency are we going to use in this case, because that's the only thing that remains. So the only decision they can do in terms of currency is whether.
Good question. I haven't researched that.
Yeah, good. That's an interesting point.
I know that you can join the Eurozone even if you're not in the European Union. Montenegro
in this case, yeah.
Yeah. So you can do that, just like you can join the dollar zone without being the United States.
Yeah, Zimbabwe.
And Panama. And Venezuela. And
Venezuela is de facto, not de jure.
Yeah, but still,
because Venezuela still want to pretend that their bolivars are worth something other than toilet paper.
Yes, but so really, I mean, can you exit the Eurozone? That's an interesting question, and shame on me, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, true. Well,
I don't know.
Well, just looking at things from what we know already, if there is a possibility to exit the European Union, there has to be a possibility to exit the Eurozone as well if you joined it.
You would think so, but the Eurozone is not regulated through a treaty. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So therefore, it doesn't incur the jurisprudential obligation to have a way to get out of it.
Yeah,
that's why I'm asking, because it may be the case that you can't get out of the Eurozone. Well, I guess Montenegro can because they're an independent country, but
even in that case, well, it's still relevant to read the treaty that they signed related to joining the Eurozone.
No, because they adopted it unilaterally. So
okay. Oh, it's unilateral, so
so
there was no
they didn't negotiate
economic or political involvement with the bank from Frankfurt.
Yeah, they're not a part of the ERM, the exchange rate mechanism, or any of that. No, they unilaterally. Oh, and Kosovo too. Kosovo is also in the Eurozone, same mechanism as in Montenegro. So,
but then you can't exactly call them as members of the Eurozone because they haven't done bilateral agreements. They're just users of Euro. If the decision has been unilateral.
Yeah, they can't be part of the Frankfurt board of directors to make decisions on quantitative easing or things of that nature, I guess. But that's an interesting question. If you can get out of the Eurozone, then I understand this provision in Article 117 in the Italian Constitution. But other than that,
yeah, probably back when Italians still had the lira, so this is also probably mostly grandfathered legislation. Yeah, then they may have had just like any other state which still has its own national currency measures or decisions that they could take related to what's happening with the currency.
Also, the state has exclusive legislative powers on, get this, weights and measures, standard time, statistical and computerized coordination of data of state, regional and local administrations, and works of intellect. How does that work? I guess patents.
Yeah,
I guess
most likely that's what they refer to.
That's what they're referring to.
Intellectual property in general.
Intellectual property, yeah. Then, of course, there is half of the treaty of the functioning of the European Union.
Yeah, copy chukad inside.
Okay, I'm not going to read that. 118, administrative functions are attributed to municipalities unless they are attributed to provinces, metropolitan cities and regions, or to the state, pursuant to the principle of subsidiarity, differentiation, and proportionality to ensure the uniform implementation. Well, hold on a second. If it's uniform implementation, then it's not local autonomy. If it's local autonomy, then it's not uniform. You can't have them both.
Yeah.
And if it's pursuant to the principles of subsidiarity, again, that necessarily means not uniform implementation, but different. So which is it? Depends on what Mattarella wants, I guess. I mean, really, it's a whole clusterfuck here. So basically, the lowest level of government is municipalities, unless specified otherwise, namely provinces, metropolitan cities, and regions, or to the state itself. So I guess the village doesn't have enough local autonomy. It has to ask for permission from the closest municipality. Okay, fair enough, I guess, in the case if the village is literally stuck to the municipality. But what about those remote localities? Do they have to travel 200 kilometers to ask for permission? De facto, I know the answer is no. But according to this, they have to. And they have to have uniform implementation. And how do you uniformly implement something in a remote mountain village and in Milano or in Turin? Interesting. Municipalities, provinces, metropolitan cities and regions shall have revenue and expenditure autonomy. Yes, unless they go into deficit, and then you ask Mattarella to rob richer municipalities to provide gibs for the fiscally irresponsible ones. Yeah, fair enough. They set and levy taxes and collect revenues of their own in compliance with the Constitution and according to the principles of coordination of state finances and the tax system. They share in the tax revenues related to their respective territories. The state legislation shall provide for an equalization fund, there you go, with no allocation constraints. What? For the territories having lower per capita taxable capacity. Revenues raised from the above-mentioned sources shall enable municipalities, provinces, to fully finance the public functions attributed to them. Regions may not levy import or export or transit duties between regions or adopt measures that in any way obstruct the freedom of movement of persons or goods between regions. Well, unless there's a cough, right? In that case, it's okay. And you'll say, well, but they didn't levy taxes. Really? You couldn't cross from one region to another unless you paid 80 euros for a useless PCR test. I'm just saying. 121, the bodies of the regions are the regional council, the regional executive, and its president. Okay, so basically mini parliaments and mini Mattarellas in every region. The electoral system and the cases of ineligibility and incompatibility of the president and other members shall be established by regional law in accordance with the fundamental principles to be established by a law of the Republic, which also establishes the term of elected offices. So I guess the region can allow to run and then win the election to be the president of the region, a mob boss, for instance, right? Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's needed, especially in the Naples area. Each region shall have a statute which, in compliance with the Constitution, shall lay down the form of government and basic principles for the organization. So I guess every region has to update their own terms of service in accordance with the Constitution. Okay, 125. Administrative tribunal of the first instance shall be established in the region in accordance with the rules established by the law of the Republic. Sections may be established in places other than the regional capital. Why do you have to write that down in the Constitution? The regional council may be dissolved and the president of the executive removed with a reasoned decree of the president of the republic in the case of acts in contrast with the constitution or grave violation of the law. The dissolution or removal may also be decided for reasons of national security. Such decree is adopted after consultation with Committee of Deputies and Senators for Regional Affairs, which is set up in the manner established by the law. The regional council may adopt a reasoned motion of no confidence against the president. That makes sense. The adoption of a no confidence motion elected by universal and direct suffrage, and the removal of permanent inability, death, or voluntary resignation of the president of the executive entail the same effects are produced by the simultaneous resignation of the majority of the council members. Okay, so why? So the president can essentially remove elected officials.
Yeah, but it's slightly more complicated since he also has to involve the parliament.
Well, it says here that it's in consultation with the committee
hold on a second.
of deputies and senators.
Oh, so he can definitely ignore because they're consultative body, they're not decisional body. So
yeah, so basically, I consulted with the deputies from the regional affairs. And they said I, the president, am being stupid in public, but I decided to be stupid in public anyway because my national security is so.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly how would an argumentation based on national security to eliminate, I don't know, some regional council from a mountainous state in the middle of Italy would work.
Well, the president of the region doesn't want to force people to wear muzzles. Therefore, grandma is coughing.
Okay. Well, I take back what I said.
You just don't have enough imagination with corruption, mate. What's wrong with you? Are you tired? Have you,
No, I lived in countries a bit too civilized.
He lives in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, in the Middle East, at least big boss is the sheikh. Then you have probably a federation.
Yeah, but in UAE, the sheikh cannot remove a chief of another emirate.
Yeah, that's true.
Even there's a bit more. There's a bit more honor among thieves.
Yeah,
because they're all corrupted thieves, of course. But so basically, the more I read through this constitution, the more I'm like, why isn't the whole place burning? Consistently.
This is pretty much the billion-dollar question. How is Italy still functioning?
Why is Italy still on the map? Why isn't anyone invading? The Constitutional Court. 134. The Constitutional Court shall pass judgment on controversies on the constitutional legitimacy of laws and enactments having force of law issued by the state and by the regions, conflicts arising from allocation of powers of the state and those powers allocated to state and regions and between regions, charges brought against the President of the Republic according to the provisions of the Constitution. Okay, so basically the Parliament also has to ask for permission from the Constitutional Court to say that the President violated the Constitution. So it's worse than in Romania, because at least in Romania, the Parliament simply asserts that the President violated the Constitution, and if it gets enough votes, the President is suspended, and then the final say of that is through the people. We get a referendum and say, well, look, those guys in the parliament say that this president violated the constitution. Do you agree? And
but this happens in the circumstance in Romania where the president is elected by the people. What in the case of a president which is elected by the parliament, why would you ask the people in order to boot him out of office?
Right. So only the constitutional court gets to pass judgment on it. Yeah, but the constitutional court is 1/3 appointed by the president, right? 135 says exactly that. The Constitutional Court shall be composed of 15 judges, a third nominated by the President, a third by Parliament in joint sitting, and a third by ordinary and administrative Supreme Courts. The judges of the Constitutional Court shall be chosen from among judges, including those retired, of the ordinary and administrative higher courts, university professors of law, and lawyers with at least 20 years of practice. Judges of the Constitutional Court shall be appointed for 9 years, beginning in each case from the day of their swearing in, and they may not be reappointed. At the expiry of their term, the constitutional judges shall leave office and the exercise of the functions thereof. the court shall elect from among its members who shall remain in office for 3 years and may be re-elected, respecting in all cases the expiry term for constitutional judges. The office of constitutional judge shall be incompatible with membership of the parliament or a regional council or whatever. Okay, so a third is appointed by the president, just like in Romania, but in Romania, those appointed by the president don't get a say on whether the president gets the boot. Because we recognize in our jurisprudence something called conflict of interest. I mean,
probably conflict of interest doesn't translate well in Italian.
Probably,
in these cases.
Probably yes, but I mean, it's amazing just how.
Just how intertwined the entire menagerie is.
Yes, and has nobody read the Constitution like the way we are doing it now? I mean, we've been doing it for 3 hours and probably another 30 minutes and we're done. But really, I mean, it only took us less than 4 hours to figure out so many things fundamentally wrong. I refuse to believe that no other person is noticing this. Surely it's glaringly obvious. And clearly the framers of the Constitution were not stupid. I mean, okay, maybe the first ones were stupid, but 80 years of consistent stupid? No, I refuse to believe that. I mean, this is a case of a conspiracy. Seriously, I mean, come on. Come on.
But see, there is at least a nice thing. Read the next paragraph related to this.
136? Or?
No, the next paragraph with the impeachment procedures against the president.
Impeachment procedures against the President of the Republic. In addition to the ordinary judges of the court, there shall be 16 members chosen by lot from among a list of citizens having the qualifications necessary for election to the Senate, so at least 40 years of age, which the Parliament prepares every 9 years through election using the same procedures as those followed in appointing ordinary judges. So a special Supreme Court of 36 judges, I guess, will have to. Oh, so in that case, the percentage of president appointees drops to only 10% or something to that effect. No, 15. Yeah, but that's still terrible. I mean, nobody appointed by the president should be involved in the decision on whether the president gets the boot or not.
Yeah, well.
That's just basic common sense. Just like the parliamentarians don't get to judge themselves. Just like for instance, when the parliamentary election was held in 2020 in Romania, there was the idea of, okay, let's postpone the election because there is a cough out there. And even our pro-cough president was like, no, that's not happening, although he wanted to, because it was like, our constitution says that, those who are to be subjected to elections don't get to decide when they are subjected to the elections. I mean, that's the point of having it fixed date, no matter what.
Even in that case, but also, even in much more serious scenarios, wasn't there an election in Romania carried out during the Second World War?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So even in the case where the entire planet has gone tits up, there's still been an election
during
being carried.
First World War too.
Yeah, during the First World War as well.
Yeah, and
so again, so sanitary measures are not an excuse. Wars aren't an excuse in order to undermine the stability of the state in such a way.
And again, Bucharest was being bombarded when we were holding the election. I mean, I'm just saying. This whole idea of, or more recently, heck, Ukraine in 2019, bombing was going on.
And the country was officially in a state of war.
Yeah, the country was officially under state of war and elections were held, including in the bombed areas. So what's this whole thing that, there are special situations? No. FDR got re-elected during World War II and the country was engaged in war. I mean, come on. 136, when the court declares the constitutional illegitimacy of a law, the law ceases to have effect the day following the publication of the decision. The decision shall be published and communicated to the Parliament and the regional councils so that whenever they deem it necessary, they shall act in conformity with the constitutional procedure. What do you mean whenever they deem wherever they deem it necessary? So again, the convict gets to decide whenever. What? Here's how it's done in Romania. The Constitutional Court says a certain law or a certain enactment having the force of law is unconstitutional. Then it becomes unconstitutional, then therefore not applicable that day. Yeah, sure, after the publication. But even in the interim period, if you continue to break that law that has already been declared unconstitutional, nothing happens. Because everyone knows that it's unconstitutional. And then you have 45 days, you, the government, or the parliament, to change it in accordance to the guidance offered to you by the Constitutional Court. And if you don't do nothing, then it goes from suspended to abolished automatically, which is how it should be. I mean,
yeah, and even 45 days is a bit too long.
Yeah, I agree. It should be 3 days, but okay. But here it's wherever they deem it. What? So basically, I mean, you know, even if you win in court, unless you start burning shit down, you have no chance of winning. A constitutional law shall establish the conditions, forms, terms, and proposing judgment. Ordinary law shall establish their... Okay. No appeals are allowed against the decision of the Constitutional Court. Really? So the European Court of Justice is there for sure. Okay.
Oh, so
here's another country that denies the supremacy of European law.
Yeah. So
hello, Ursula von der Leyen.
Are Italians saying that the national law is first and then European law is second? Or
well, no, they say the constitutional law is superior to European law, which is exactly what we're saying as well. But we get nagged by EU for daring to say it.
Well, of course, nobody said that EU isn't full of hypocrites.
In this case, they're not full of hypocrites, they're full of shit. Altogether. Yeah. Amendments to the Constitution. The law amending the Constitution and other constitutional laws shall be adopted by each House after 2 successive debates at intervals of not less than 3 months, and shall be approved by an absolute majority of the members of the House in the second voting. Said laws are submitted to a popular referendum when, within 3 months of their publication, such a request is made by 1/5 of the members of the House, or 500,000 voters, or 5 regional councils. The law submitted to a referendum shall not be promulgated if not approved by a majority of valid votes. A referendum shall not be held if the law has been approved in the second voting by each of the members of the Houses by a majority of 2/3 of the members. So basically, if 2/3 of the members of each House want to put in the Constitution, I don't know, mandatory muzzles forever, then that's it. It's a done deal. What?
Yeah, when it comes to the Constitution, if you have 2/3 of donkeys deciding on whatever stupid measure they thought of in synchronized, have the option, or not you have the option of not even bothering with a referendum to ask those donkeys or those other lesser donkeys that you're leading as a population, whether you agree with it or not. It's yes, the Italian democracy.
Even the form of organization called the Caliphate is slightly fairer than this.
well, at least the Caliphate, as opposed to the Italian Republic, taxation is illegal under the Caliphate, because the Caliphate has to comply with the Sharia law, and Sharia law says taxation is illegal with the exception of the zakat and the jizya if you're a non-Muslim.
Yeah, and not to mention that under Caliphate, the mandatory currency is gold coin. So
yes, government mandated gold standard.
Yes, so therefore superior currency than the toilet paper called the euro. So which I understand the Italians like because it's superior to the lira, although they probably should have kept the lira, considering that every single Italian lost about an apartment's worth of money as a result of being in the eurozone. I'm just saying. So yeah, this is the article that pisses me off the most. 138. Basically, the political class, if it agrees with itself, they can put in the Constitution whatever the fuck they want, and nobody has any recourse against it. A referendum may be called if they feel like it. What? And yeah, and the referendum is binding if it is called. Guess what? It's never called. What the
Very
fuck
funny.
is that, mate? The form of a republic shall not be a matter for constitutional amendment. Well, of course.
This would have been absolutely hilarious if they could change that as well. so this one is probably the most permanent article of the constitution that they really cannot change it as much as they want to.
Yeah, so basically Mattarella cannot proclaim himself king, yes? Or caliph.
Well,
Everything else is up for debate between Mattarella's friends, but he cannot proclaim himself as His Royal Majesty. Okay, fair enough. Okay.
the ducat of Italy.
Yeah, he can't proclaim himself Duke either. Okay, okay, transitional. That's less of an important because well, most of these are definitely. It shall be forbidden. So, for instance, among the transitional, so these one are noted with the Roman numbers. Where was it? Because that's the one I was looking for. Up to 5 years after the implementation of the Constitution, without prejudice, however, it shall be forbidden to reorganize under any form whatsoever the dissolved fascist party. Notwithstanding Article 48, the law has established for not more than 5 years from the implementation of the Constitution temporary limitations to the right to vote and eligibility for the leaders responsible for the fascist regime. Okay, then he explained Franco Fratelli to me. Just saying, mate.
But was he a leader of the fascist regime?
No, of course not. He wasn't even born during. I mean, Franco Fratelli was a mayor like in 2012 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It says a temporary limitations to the right to vote and eligibility for the leaders responsible for the fascist regime.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair
So
enough.
it's not the old fascism; it's the new fascist regime. So,
I see.
so
So neo-fascism is okay, just
Yeah.
not traditional fascism. Not to mention that you don't really need to organize a new fascist party. I mean, the constitution itself has a lot of the Giovanni Gentile fascist ideology in it, the moral progress of society through corporations. I mean, all that is missing really is the Chamber of Corporations and the official title of Duke. For Mattarella. I mean, everything else is already kind of into place. And trains running on time. Everything else is kind of into place already. And yeah, sure, there is no racist legislation or racist practices. But you know, it's still a 2 or 3 tiered society depending on how your QR looks like. So you know, I mean, it's still quite similar. I mean, definitely the old Duke would have approved this. Okay, so yeah, it establishes the.
For forbidding the House of Savoy from ever voting or being a leader in Italy.
Yeah, and their male descendants. Hey, come on, that's sexist. Okay. Titles of nobility shall not be recognized. Okay, so yeah, that's why he can't proclaim himself as Duke.
Up until he amends the Constitution, the transitional documents.
Yeah, the order of Saint Mauritius shall be preserved as a hospital corporation and shall function in the ways established by law. The law shall regulate the suppression of the heraldic council, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, what the hell is this, mate? How does Italy still exist?
How has Italy not ended up in a civil war that will make Syria, Iraq, and ISIS look like a walk in the park?
Yeah. How come there hasn't been any civil wars since 1947, from the first iteration of this constitution? I mean, really, there's just too much goddamn power on an effectively unelected official, the president of the republic, and too many of these small, apparently small and insignificant technocratic aspects that snowball and have been snowballing into real issues, such as the judiciary issue with the prosecutor being constitutionally obliged to bring criminal proceedings on any disdainful nonsense. Why? And please, do explain to me why isn't shit burning?
Yeah, how Italy still remains to be functional. It either has to be outside of blind luck and by some form of unexplained inertia, the country is still functioning, or there is a legit conspiracy of some people behind this honk of a state somehow keeping the party going in one shape or another.
Well,
Either one or the other, because the way it looks like the constitution itself and the way the country is as a whole, there is no reasonable explanation how it's still functioning and how we still pretend it's an organized country.
Well, I have two explanations. In fact, one, but two historical events that can explain. One being the struggle against the mafia, which united the nation, saying, okay, it doesn't matter how it's going, it's important that we get rid of the mafia. So I guess that's when all of that, and because they had a lot of prosecutors who would be intimidated by the mafia, that's how you ended up with that honk amendment.
Okay.
Then they supported joining the EU and surrendering as much sovereignty as possible, because at the very least, since they're part of the EU and part of those countries too big to fall, something will be done every time there's a problem, and there's always a problem, of course. So the place can keep on running somewhat-ish, sort of, maybe.
So, but looking at it and based on the realities that we are aware of when it comes to Italy, at least in the past decade and a bit.
Yeah, it requires intervention from Brussels every 2 or 3 years, yes. Yes, it's a country on life support because it's terribly organized from an institutional perspective. But hey, nobody's protesting, really.
Yeah, even then. But well, considering the way we know the Italian judicial system to be clogged up with all sorts of ridiculous things. So not just starting with the criminal courts and the
civil courts as well. They're a nightmare.
Civil courts are a nightmare. Divorce courts are as well.
Don't get me started on Italian.
Administrative courts are as well. But how does the country function where you measure the dispensation of justice in years or decades even? That's really curious. How exactly is the country still functioning at a judicial level and not falling straight into strict anarchy because the judicial isn't de facto working?
Some litigation is literally grandfathered in. I mean, you inherit
court cases.
You inherit a court case from your grandfather. He started the case in the 70s, but unfortunately he died in 2010. And you still have another 15 years of litigation ahead of you after the already 10 years that were litigated by your father until he said, fuck this shit. So there you go. Now you, the kid, congratulations, you inherited a court case. Make sure you read the file. And where's the file? Oh, it's that room.
Yeah.
What do you mean that? Yeah, the entire room is full of papers.
Oh, well, but by the time you're gonna die, you're gonna finish reading at least a quarter of the documents.
And okay, I'm exaggerating with the full room, but it's true. There are situations in Italy where young people quite literally inherited court cases. And by the time it reached the third generation, so basically they inherited court cases from their grandparents, they're like, why the hell are we even litigating? Because everyone that knew what the situation they were arguing about in the first place, they're all dead.
Yeah, they're all dead on both sides.
On both sides, yes. So so basically you have a bunch of blinking 25-year-olds who are like, by the way, I'm suing you. Why? I don't know. I just inherited this. Oh yeah, Grandpa mentioned something about it. Okay, but what are we arguing about? Fuck knows. Have you read the file? No, I haven't either.
No.
And not to mention how many judges die in the in the meantime.
Well, at least the job as an Italian judge is probably one of the safest in the world. If you end up as a court judge in Italy, then nobody's gonna change
Especially
you.
in an appellate court. There's just
in a court of appeals.
Yeah, wherever you have those big files, like 50,000 pages or more.
Yeah, it's fascinating that they still have a court of appeals aside from the institutional responsibility of having court of appeals. But after the cases lasting for so long in the first court in itself, people still want to appeal the decisions. So yeah, probably that's the only explanation that such cases extend for decades up until your children and your grandchildren inherit them.
Yeah, I mean, there was half a meme, but it was quite true. I think Il Giornale, I don't remember, it was about 10 years ago. They wrote an article about how the High Court of Cassazione managed to finally issue the final ruling of all of the cases before 1980. And that was like in 2013 or 14.
Yeah, so there's a standard.
Yeah, so there's your standard. There are still cases running that are from 1980. I presume by now they have finally reached 1984 or 5 or something, but still.
Yeah, and just looking at these songs, so in order to extrapolate, this is how the constitution looks like. God forbid what's in the set codes of each one.
We're never going to do the judicial code or the tax code of Italy.
Tax code, labor code, administrative, penal. No.
Well, actually, the penal code is very short and is actually quite well written. I have gone through it, but the civil code is something like this. No, thank you. The civil code and associated jurisprudence is 5 books like this. Oh, thank you. No, I ain't doing that shit. So yeah, this was the Italian constitution. I will presume that my duty to the donors and the public that required us to go through this, I will presume that the duty is fulfilled. Surely I fulfilled my Italian constitutional duties better than Sergio Mattarella.
Vote for il Presidente.
Vote for me as the President of Italy. I'll probably do a better job, especially with that power. It doesn't say in the constitution how should the President remove people from office. So I guess, I can file a paper to the Parliament, file a bill to the Parliament and say the Helicopters Act. And finally get the Parliament together to suspend me. Make history. All right. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you all soon. Cheers.